All right, who keeps track of their preseason national championship game predictions? Anybody out there? I got to think Georgia, sure. They showed up on a lot of people's preseason projection for the national championship game. Georgia, of course. Georgia and Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Then after that, probably fell off the cliff to maybe Michigan. Georgia, TCU. And we're going to preview it for the next few hours with you right here at the Voice of College Football. And we are happy to be joined by Melissa Treebwasser from Frogs Today. Hey, Melissa.
Hey, Mark. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. It's great to see you. Thanks so much for making some time. I know you don't have a whole lot of it. You're jumping all over the place, trying to make sure you cover everything TCU related for the championship game. So let's get right to it. Past just a quick comment on the feel, the vibe this week around the team, and just your own experience.
Yeah, I mean, I got into town last night. We had media day earlier this morning, so we got to hear from the entire TCU roster, all of the assistant coaches, which was great. Then we got to spend about 20 minutes out at their first practice down in California as well. And so, it's interesting. I was doing a podcast earlier this week with Mike Golick Jr., and he talked about his experience playing in the championship game 10 years ago and how similar kind of the rise of that Notre Dame team versus this TCU team was to kind of come out of nowhere. And I mean, Notre Dame's Notre Dame, whatever. But there were some parallels of just kind of the unexpected nature of this season. And, the thing that he said is that it's so easy to kind of get lost in the preparation and the spotlight in the moment. And, this is the only time in college football where the entire college football world is focused on you. I mean, signing day, early signing periods behind us, the late signing period still a couple weeks away. If you love college football, you're paying attention to this game and this week. And that's a very, very new experience for the players at TCU, most of whom have never even played a bowl game, let alone one of this magnitude coming into this season. But they're focused, they're locked in. They don't give off the impression that they're just happy to be here. They're here to win a game. And I got to talk with Kirk Herbstreit a little bit, and just saying these things is completely overwhelming to me. Like, oh yeah, I just casually had a conversation with Kirk Herbstreit. It's fine. But he said that this is not a team that hopes they can win. This is a team that thinks they can win. And that's the attitude that I've seen. They're not overconfident. They're not cocky, but they're also not scared. And they believe that they belong here. And that's a huge part of the success that could be in front of them.
Melissa, we're all suddenly trying to become experts on the 3-3-5 defense and trying to figure out what that is. Nobody heard of it outside of the Big 12 or TCU circles just a few weeks ago. And now everyone's delving into this. So I'll give you my brief explanation, and then you're going to fill in so many more gaps because I think you can have basically two philosophies in stopping a passing game. And of course, the Big 12 is built on passing and trying to stop prolific passing offenses. You either get to the quarterback or you deflect and stop the passing game on the back end. You tackle in space, you break it up. And TCU's pretty much determined, hey, we recruit speed. Let's get more speed on the field, and we'll do it that way. And, I've just found out a few interesting things about it just in regards to the linebackers obviously showed, you would think, okay, long, lean linebackers, not necessarily. These guys are stout against the run as they showed against Michigan. The corners even have more run responsibility setting the edge than you would think. And of course, the safety has to be both a cover guy and a guy that just runs to the football. So it's just hats getting to the football.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best way I've heard this described is from my friend Parker Fleming at Stats of War on Twitter, who calls it the spill and kill. And basically what you're trying to do is direct the ball to a spot where you have better numbers than the offense does. And so you want to overwhelm the line of scrimmage. And what's so interesting about the 3-3-5, and I'm still learning the dynamics of this too, because I became, a semi-expert at the 4.25 over 25 years. And now it's like, I got to learn all over again as well. But it's the way that you don't know where that extra man is coming from. You're obviously outnumbered at the line of scrimmage when you're putting, just there's three guys on the defensive line. And so it's where do the linebackers drop in? Where do the safeties drop in? Mark Perry has been one of the unsung heroes in run defense. He struggled a little bit in coverage, which is something that is concerning for TCU going into Monday night. But he's excellent at the line of scrimmage. I think he leads the team in tackles because he just understands how to be at the right place, the right time. And those linebackers are a little bit bigger than you would think. They're not kind of the old school linebackers of the Gary Patterson era, but they're athletic too. And, D. Winters had a heck of a game in the Fiesta Bowl, both, jumping at the line of scrimmage, rushing the passer, and even dropping back in coverage a little bit too. Johnny Hodges being healthy has made a big difference in the run game. And then the athleticism of guys like Jamoy Hodge and Shad Banks. And if they had Marcel Brooks on the season, that unit would be even better, even more athletic. So, yeah, I mean, it's keeping the opponent guessing offensively because you don't know where that extra man or two are going to come from. And that's where the advantage is. It was super, super effective against Michigan and their power run game. And as was getting Michigan off schedule and getting them in a negative game script. But I think where Georgia is such a better passing team and uses the pass to set up the run as much as they use the run to set up the pass, it's going to alter the way that Joe Gillespie calls that game. And he's going to need more out of his linebackers and safeties and coverage than they've had to really show the last couple of weeks.
When you run down those names, Melissa, it reminds me that I guess if you play on the defensive side of the football in a high school in the state of Texas, and your name is either Hodge or Hodges, maybe Sonny Dykes doesn't even need to recruit. Just sign them. Just go ahead and sign them.
Seriously. And, well, and it was funny because we were talking to Travius Hodges Tomlinson this morning at media day, and he mentioned how he started his career as an offensive player, and somebody asked, his uncle is LaDainian Tomlinson, is why didn't LT get you to stay on offense? And he kind of said, I figured at my size and my athleticism, I could potentially, play at a higher level on defense than I could on offense. And it looks like he made a pretty good choice.
Moving to the offensive side of the ball, Melissa, and we want to make sure everybody's aware. At Frogs Today, you see it right there on the banner. Follow Melissa on Twitter, the coach Melissa. And again, it's Frogs Today. Kendre Miller, do we have an idea? I saw like a 50-50 type prognosis on his availability.
So he was there today. He was walking around. He was doing interviews. I think if it's up to Kendre Miller, he will play. I think the coaching staff is being more judicious with his health. This is a guy that's probably going to be entering the NFL draft at the conclusion of this game. And, the coaching staff is doing their due diligence to make sure they don't put a kid out there that's not physically capable of playing. Right now, they're calling it a game time decision. He looked pretty good walking around the convention center, but that's walking around the convention center. He wasn't a full participant in practice. He was there. He was kind of stretching, getting loose. We didn't see in the short period that we were there, we didn't see him do a whole lot of active things. I'm going to guess that he's going to be out there based on no insider knowledge other than I think he's going to try to play. How effective he is in being able to play at what percentage his knee is going to be kind of a determining factor of how long he's out there. Knowing Kendre, knowing how hard he's worked, knowing all that he's been through in his career, if there's any chance for him to get out there and go, he's going to give it a go. I mean, I know he wants to be out there so badly, so obviously. But if he can't, I mean, it's going to be Amari DeMarcado, who was great against Michigan, like shockingly, I think surprised. I had a great little conversation with him today earlier about like, it's a guy that's kind of been bemoaned by TCU fans, for the 34 years he's been in college there. And he had his moment and kind of his redemption arc. And, he grew up in Inglewood, just down the street from SoFi. His mom is a male person in the area. His dad drives a shuttle at LAX. Max Duggan's obviously gets talked about as the storybook ending, but Amari DeMarcado's got a pretty dang good story too. And if he has to be the guy, I think that people have a lot of faith that he can be effective. Kendre brings so much to the offense with just his speed and his ability to not just run over people, but run by them. TCU probably needs him on the field at close to full strength to stay in this one. But the next man up mentality has been a big part of this team all season. I mean, they're healthier now than they had been, for a very long time. And they've been kind of having to fill gaps and fill pieces all season. So it'll be interesting to see if maybe it's Imani Bailey, maybe Trent Battle gets more run. We haven't seen a whole lot of Corey Wren or some of these other guys. So I think we're all hoping Kendra can play. I think he'll give it a go. But if not, you're just going to have to trust the guys behind them to do what they've been doing, the last couple of weeks and making big plays.
Melissa, we know you've got other commitments. Just keep us honest on the time and,
Will do.
take off whenever you need to. You know, Georgia is so similar in many ways to Michigan, and TCU took Michigan off of its game. And, we discussed it. It was shocking to a lot of people, both from a trenches standpoint on both sides of the ball, how well they were able to be effective. And then also just taking Michigan out of its game, seeing Michigan do things that you wouldn't expect them to do. I really don't see Georgia panicking in that way. They just seem like they are who they are. If they run a trick play, it would be very much within the realm of, okay, this is a good time to do this. We don't need to do this. We're not panicking. But otherwise, they're going to be balanced on offense, and they're going to run their scheme on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, I mean, that's, I think if there's one thing that's a little bit disheartening for TCU fans is you're not going to have Georgia playing on their heels. They've been here before. They aren't scared. The lights are not going to be too bright. And if they get down 2 touchdowns like Michigan does, they're not going to panic. I mean, we saw what they did against Ohio State last week. Georgia also is frankly a much more talented team across the board than Michigan. Michigan recruits at a really, really high level. And I think we talked about this earlier this week or last week. I have no idea what anything is anymore. We're just rolling with things. But yeah, I mean, this is a top 2 or 3 talent team in the country over the last several years. They know what it's going to feel like to walk into SoFi Stadium. They know what it's going to be like when all the flash bulbs start popping at kickoff. They're not going to be rattled by anything, and they are so robotic in their preparation and so businesslike in the way that they do things. They've shown some weaknesses, some soft spots, defensively especially. But I don't think that you can get them on their heels and then just keep running at them. TCU is going to need some things to go their way. They're going to need some fortuitous bounces. They're going to need some turnovers. They're going to need a big special teams play because you aren't going to shake Georgia and you aren't going to shake Stetson Bennett. They're very much like TCU, and that if you go into the fourth quarter and you're within, 2 scores, you still feel like you got a good shot at pulling it out at the end. And both of these teams have proven that they can do that time and time again. The difference is Georgia's proven it, at a very high level, whereas TCU, in their biggest game when they were trailing the Big 12 championship, weren't quite able to get over the hump. And so I think that TCU has to be out in front, and then they're going to have to fight to stay out in front if they want an opportunity to take home a national title Monday.
Melissa, lastly, you brought up talent differential or perceived talent differential. I'm a big believer in the recruiting rankings, not for every particular player, but you can draw a line from the top 5 or 6 right into the college football playoff in regards to who has played in all the games. And now comes TCU, and Cincinnati was an outlier. They're different. They played in the group of 5. Now you have TCU. Now we get to this point, though. We saw 2 teams in the other semifinal game that are 2 of the top 3 to 4 most talented teams. Michigan's in the top 10. TCU's, what are they in the composite?
30,
probably
yeah. In the 30s. Yeah.
So how do you equate that at this point? Because they're such a better football team than 25 of the 30 teams ahead of them,
Mark, it's the vibes, man. Like, I don't know how else to say it. It's the vibes. I think Herb Street had a great kind of talking about this because, he had a USC beat reporter, and he had a Georgia beat reporter, and they're all kind of doing the talk down to TCU because, it's cute that they're here, but they aren't going to do that. And what Herb Street said is like, listen, like at this level of college football, talent obviously rules the day. There's a reason why we see the same programs in the college football playoff over and over and over again. But you got to give credit to a team that knows who it is and knows how to play together and plays with the unselfishness and the grit and the determination that TCU does. Will that be enough to overcome Georgia? I mean, there's no guarantee, but does that magic, does that perseverance I was talking to freshman Demonic Williams, who's the nose tackle, and he said that when he showed up on campus, that the thing that he would ask about last season, about where this program was, and the guys would tell him to a man, he said, they all said, don't ask me about last year. I don't want to talk about last year. I'm so tired of losing. And so this team bought in from the winter ball, from January when they started practice or started lifting or whatever, from the moment that Kaz Kazadi showed up at strength and conditioning program. And he said, you're going to be champions and I'm not going to accept anything else. And at first the guys kind of were like, yeah, everybody says that. Maybe we can play for a Big 12 championship. And then they started to kind of believe, no, we can, if we all buy in and we all sell out for this season, maybe we can do more than that. Maybe we can actually see ourselves playing in the college football national championship. And, you know, you hear the cliches all the time with players of the, you know, every season, everybody starts 0-0 and we're all playing for a national championship. This team started to believe it in a way that, like, you can't write that off as just another cliche. And again, I mean, the talent, you can look at this thing on paper and say time and time again, TCU has no business being in this game. They have no business beating Georgia. You know, they'll be a 2-touchdown underdog at kickoff for a reason. And it's cute that they got here and we love this story. But at the end of the day, they're going to get their butts handed to them and everybody's going to, you know, go home feeling like the ultimate, you know, winner wins out. But I just wouldn't discount TCU that easily because of the way these guys are wired. And, you know, my common answer when I'm asked what they think is going to happen on Monday night is I can't sit here and tell you with a straight face I expect TCU to win, but I'd be a damn fool to be surprised if they did. You know, like there's something. I don't know how far magic can carry you in college football or the hypnotoad can carry you in the national championship game, but if any fate, any college football gods, if any of that stuff really is real, then maybe, you know, maybe that does give TCU a little bit extra juice to kind of pull off the shocker one more time and upset the apple cart in college football at the highest possible level. All that being said, this is also a really talented team. I mean, Quentin Johnston's going to be the first wide receiver off the board. That offensive line is bigger than Michigan's offensive line at every single position. Kendre Miller is an NFL player. Jared Wiley's probably going to be a professional tight end down the line. Steve Avila and Alon Ali are probably going to be draft picks. D. Winters is going to find a way to stick on a roster. I mean, these are guys that are really, really good. They aren't Georgia 5-star good, but they've played a lot of college football. They've played a lot of college football together, and they came in as motivated as anybody to end the losing and change their fortunes. And they've got the opportunity to do that. They won't let it pass them by.
Well, shoot, 6, 8, 10 weeks ago, it was going to end against Kansas State or Oklahoma State or Texas. You know,
yeah.
everybody, it was going to be the next game. Melissa, thank you so much for stopping by and giving us such great coverage over the last month or so. And enjoy the game. Do everything you can to soak it up. Of course.
Yeah. I mean, you say, I just, every time I'm walking around and I'm from California, I'm from NorCal. And so I'm walking around and there's all these banners with national championship and TCU, and they're in the same thing. And that combination of the words TCU and national championship, I never, ever thought I'd see in my lifetime. And so, you know, I want to see them finish the job as an alum. It would mean the world to me, to everybody, to see them win. But just being here in this moment is really, really special. And, you know, I hope that the college football fans, you know, whether you're rooting for Georgia, whether you think that the Big 12 is garbage or you think TCU doesn't belong or whatever, I just encourage you guys to watch this team play. I think that if you haven't watched TCU play yet, you're going to come away with a lot of respect for those players and the program, the way they carry themselves, the way that they interact with each other and in the community. It's a really great group of guys. It's been an absolute pleasure to cover them and to get to know them as people, not just players. And if there's one thing I know, I said as a TCU alum, they've done us really proud to this part, both on and off the field. And it's going to be really cool to be there on the sidelines watching them, hopefully, you know, make a really great national championship game appearance. And hey, maybe pull off the upset and shock the world.
And you've got most of the nation behind you. I think you know that. So, Melissa, thank you so much. Enjoy it. Soak it up. And we'll see you soon.
We'll talk next week to preview or to recap the championship win for the Horned Frogs, right?
Absolutely, we will.
All right, thanks, Mark.
See you, Melissa. Melissa Triebwasser, Frogs Today. Always a good take from her, and so excited for her that she's able to experience that, because, again, that is somebody who covers the team, loves football, loves TCU. She's an alum. And you got to respect that. We've got some callers on the line. Brian, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, man. I want to start us off with a statement, man, because obviously it's a huge deal, especially with all the parties that are involved, obviously. And I want to give, you know, I'm very grateful for the NCAA for just being able to, complete this investigation and just for all the parties involved that had to deal with this entire this burger crime and the brown jug. It just saddens me, man, that that Harbaugh would do such a thing, man, and purchase that burger. I just think, man, I just never thought I'd see the day, man. I never thought I'd see the day.
Did we ever get clarification and confirmation as to whether the fries and coleslaw were included?
I don't know, man. I mean, that can make it worse, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
if back on a year for that, another year penalty.
Maybe I don't know if he's going to get jail time for this. I honestly don't know. I'm curious to see exactly what happens with this investigation and just how deep it goes.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I haven't looked into it too much, but certainly I need to here soon. It doesn't seem like much on the surface, but that's what everyone is going by, is that $15 hamburger purchase, which seems, of course, in this day and age of NIL, seems completely, you can't even call it a joke. It's real. It's well beyond that. The NCAA was a joke well before this.
Oh yeah. I guess the main thing that they're mad about wasn't that he bought the burger, but basically, from what I've read on message boards and things like that, was he basically told him to F off when they asked about it.
Is that an NCAA violation? Telling someone to F off?
No, no. I mean, look, man, I don't understand the NCAA and what their consistencies are with how they do things, but I guess I wrote them the wrong way. Because their phrase was he didn't cooperate, and from what I've read, that when they say that, he basically was like, "Are you really looking into me buying?" And they were committed recruits. It wasn't like they were recruits that he still had to persuade or anything.
But until they're signed, they are not in the program, on the team, under scholarship.
True.
We know how many guys decommit and flip.
Oh, yeah. I guess the main thing is I get why he told him to F off. He's probably, in his head, he's probably like, really? Are you getting mad at me for a $15 burger while you got clear teams, giving Hellcats and bags and calling Marvin Harris, USC's allegedly calling Marvin Harrison Jr. and he's not even in the transfer portal. Like, I mean, I don't know, man. It's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is crazy, and it will be intriguing to see how that develops and how much it's pursued and what comes of it. Because if that's all there is to it, is we're talking about, buying a kid a hamburger, and then when questioned about it, shunning the NCAA and telling them to F off and leave me alone.
Yeah, it's crazy. But
that might be the bigger hit that he's going to take. In apparently, what would the term be?
Cover up?
Not a cover up, but basically not cooperating with the NCAA. He'll probably get I would expect this is going to be a slap on the wrist, some type of, the NCAA is going to be, have an oversight of the program for the next year or two, meaning basically nothing, just we're going to be watching you for the next year.
Yeah, and this is where it makes sense that Harbaugh would want to go to the NFL. Just stuff like that, just like the hassle of having to deal with things like that. Because you don't have to deal.
I would rather coach in the NFL than coach a college football team today.
Oh, 100%.
You don't have to deal with, you got to keep all those kids safe and out of trouble. Like that's always been the case. You got to keep them eligible in terms of their grades. And now you got all this NIL and transfer portal business going on constantly. Oh, I'd much rather coach in the NFL.
Oh, 100%. And then I want to talk about the actual national championship. TCU, I would compare them. If I had to place a bet, I don't think they'll be back in the playoff in the future. If I had to make a bet, But if I had to compare them to a team, not in terms of talent and not in terms of like, how good they were specifically, but in terms of like a one-off kind of situation, LSU with Ed Orgeron. They had that 1 year in 2019, and then, any other year they weren't really competing for a championship. But the reason I say that is because if you look at what it took for them to get here, pretty much every game was a claw to win. And they get they get all the credit in the world for that. But if I had to make a wager on them doing that every year, I can't see that. And this team is a perfect example of why teams should get an opportunity and why we should end the discussion of if TCU wins the Big 12, I don't think they should get in because I don't think they're as good as Alabama. This was a perfect example of why TCU deserved to get in to the playoff, because they clearly showed that they belonged despite how they played during the year. I just don't see them doing it in the future. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think everything that you have to say is reasonable, but at the same time, Brian, by discounting TCU in the future, maybe we're making the same mistake that people were making all along from week to week this year and discounting and not giving them a chance to make it to the end of the season. Now,
very, very true. Very true. I guess I'm just looking at it from like, if I'm assessing how they performed this year, the roster they have, how they recruit, and all those things. If I had to make a wager based on the odds of them repeating a season like this, I can't see it. I'm happy that they're where they're at, and I think honestly, they could beat Georgia. I get people saying, Georgia's, they're going to blow them out and things like that. But if I look at Georgia's defense, I look at how they TCU fights and wins games. I wouldn't count them out against anybody this year.
Of course they can beat Georgia. Absolutely they can.
100%. Yeah. And the main reason I think that is Georgia's defense has holes. They have holes in their defense. And TCU's offense, that's a great offense. And that's an offense you can't count out. So I think they could be in any game, and I think they're going to be in this game.
The thing that has to be taken into consideration about TCU's trajectory forward would be, after this experience and after accomplishing what they've accomplished on this stage for this season, and knowing what we know about a lot of things that are going on there, and Melissa's done a nice job, our first guest, Melissa's done a nice job in recent conversations of letting us know a lot of the initiatives there in the athletic program, that this may not be the same program going forward. This may be groundbreaking.
I agree with that, and I also don't. And I'm going to give you a perfect example of why. Michigan's been in the playoff 2 years in a row, yet their recruiting has not seen that crazy boost that you would expect to see. And NIL is a huge part of that. The fact that money has become a driving factor for recruits, and Michigan's one of the best, college football, most historic college football programs there ever was. And despite them being in the playoffs 2 years in a row, they haven't seen that boost that you would expect to see. So yeah, maybe it could happen, but if I had to guess, I don't think it would happen because of the landscape.
Yeah, well, I'm not predicting it. However, while Michigan has a ton of advantages over TCU also has a few advantages over Michigan. One, that it's remaining in a Power 5 conference that is going to be watered down considerably by Texas and Oklahoma leaving. However, they're going to be competing against a lot of decent programs like Oklahoma State, Kansas State, those schools, but no elites. They're not going to have to run into Ohio State and Penn State and USC and UCLA every year to try to get to a college football playoff, number one. Number two, look at their recruiting footprint. They're in the state of Texas. They could recruit. Now, of course, they're competing directly against Texas in addition to Texas A&M and then everybody else that goes in and raids Texas. However, if they become a bigger player because of a national championship game appearance, they've got enough football players in the Dallas area to compete and win a Big 12 championship on a regular basis.
Oh yeah, okay. In that sense, yes, I 100% agree. Yeah, because for example, Michigan always has to play Ohio State, despite how they recruit or whatever. They're going to always have to play Ohio State, and TCU also the 12-team playoff is going to make it much easier for them to compete as well. And that starts in 2024, correct?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean it's going to be much easier. I was talking mainly from a recruiting standpoint, but those other factors, yes, I 100% agree that they're going to have an easier time competing in the conference that they're in, and possibly because of the 12-team playoff, competing even more so. So yeah, I do agree with that, and I'm excited to watch the game. I'm actually this is a I think either wins, it's a good story because you got Stetson Bennett, who's a walk-on QB. If he wins, he's going to go down as a legendary quarterback. His
really
stories.
is. People don't want to
Oh,
hear that, but he is. He will be a legendary quarterback, even if he loses this game. So he's
100%.
already a legendary quarterback on some levels. But yeah, if you go 2 for 2, winning national championships,
As
not
a
a whole lot
walk-on,
of guys can say that.
and as a walk-on, that's probably the more amazing part. Because has a walk-on won a national championship outside of him? I don't. I think
Wow.
he was the first one last year.
Yeah, that's a great question. I can't think of one. Can anybody in the chat come up with a walk-on who has won a national championship at quarterback?
I'm almost 1,000% because I remember watching that game. I think they did say that.
I don't know who that would be. Baker
But now-
Mayfield would have come the closest.
Yeah, but now imagine him winning back-to-back as a walk-on after already being the first one to do it. I mean, he's going to be immortalized. And then on the other end, if TCU wins it, that's a classic Cinderella story. So to me, either way, it's a good story. Whoever wins the national championship. That's how I look at it.
Yeah, I think the TCU story is much better. Georgia's going to be around forever, and they're a dynasty, and they are a elite program at the very top. I would have to rate them as the best program currently in college football. But yeah, I get your point about Stetson Bennett in particular.
Oh yeah, and then my last point I'll make on here, and it's just a question I like to ask. I asked Zach Smith this question as well, on his, and he thought it was a good question. If you had who, and I wouldn't necessarily consider either run disappointing, but if you had to pick between Ohio State post 2014 versus Harbaugh's tenure, which one would you consider more disappointing, given factors such as expectations and recruiting?
Wow, that's a great question. I was going to throw you for a loop and say, you know what, that was an awful question. Zach Smith doesn't know what he's talking about. Terrible question. No, that's a great question. Oh my goodness. Urban Meyer, for as much as he dominated at Ohio State and they owned the Big Ten, when you win so much and you win 90% of your games, it only makes the losing and those specific losses magnified. If you never lose, you're losing one game a year. Obviously, that game is magnified. So starting in 2015 for Ohio State, 2015, a major disappointment, but despite going 12-1 and finishing number 3 in the country, just because they were so loaded. I'm going to say that because of where Harbaugh took over the program in 2015, that was basically a 500 program post Lloyd Carr, that the Ohio State college football playoff era results past the championship in 2014 is more disappointing.
Yeah, because Zach Smith said if you would have asked me, because he was on the coaching staff, obviously, he's like, if you would have asked me after we won the 2014 championship, how many championships we would have by 2023, or if we would just have a couple more, or if we wouldn't have a couple more, he said, I would have said you're crazy. If we wouldn't have at least 1 or 2 championships after that 2014 championship, he said, I would have thought you was crazy.
Yeah.
So I know the only reason I asked that is because that's a common debate between Michigan and Ohio State fans. It's like, oh, Harbaugh's tenure is disappointing, but then the Michigan fans gonna be like, well, if you think that, well, do you think that Ohio State's run post 2014 is disappointing? So it's just a fascinating thing to consider.
To jump on that one, analyze those two, but at first glance, I'm going Ohio State is the bigger disappointment, despite having a much better record in those 8 years than Michigan.
Gotcha. All right. Well, good talking to you, man. Hope you have a good day.
We appreciate it, Brian. Have a good one. Welcome in, everyone, to the Voice of College Football. Appreciate you being here. We got Ballard on the line. Hey, Ballard.
What's up, Mark? How you doing?
I am doing well. What have you been up to?
Yes, sir. Oh, not much, man. Just enjoying this as much as possible, trying to enjoy this final week of college football. And we got a big game Monday night, obviously. And I wanted to talk about it because, TCU has been built on comebacks this year. How many times they've been down. I don't think this is a team that they can get down against. I think now you can be down a touchdown or a field goal, but I think as soon as they get down double digits against Georgia, just because of Georgia's defense and how strong it is, I mean, isn't there a feeling that maybe the game's over if you get down double digits, or do you have to believe in Max Duggan?
Well, I'll take a few different angles here. One would be that I agree with you because of Georgia's defense and because of their championship pedigree, their championship standard, mindset, poise, all of that goes into them being a championship caliber team and program, that they just are supremely confident. Therefore, to get down a couple scores to that is a monumental task. It's not, to me, about TCU having the confidence to do it, because they've done it multiple times. I believe that if it's 24-10, somewhere in the second quarter, TCU is going to be supremely confident that they can, like they have a number of times in the past, come back and win the game. But that they have to beat Georgia to do it. It all depends how much time's left in the game, of course. If TCU's down 2 scores in the first half, I'm not going to feel real good about their position, but they're going to have plenty of time to continue to play within their offense and not panic and not do anything that they didn't game plan to do. There'll be plenty of time. Now, if they're down 24-10 with 10 minutes left in the game, that's a different manner. But I totally get your point and totally believe it, that it's not about TCU. They're supremely confident. They believe in themselves. But to be down 2 scores to a championship caliber team that's already proven it, already knows who they are, yeah, that's TCU needs to get out in front, and they need to play either even or, and as you mentioned, I don't think it's a big deal if they stay within a field goal, a touchdown. If they stay within 1 score, 1 possession, then they're fine.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, if it's 14-10, don't worry. If it's 21-14, 21-17, don't worry. But if they get in a position where it's like at the half, let's say 24-14, and they're down, like I say, double digits, because I don't know if it's because Georgia won't go away, like on offense. I really don't know about that part, but the defense of Georgia won't go away, and they're just going to keep chopping at the bit. And we know how tough Kirby Smart can be, and how he is as a head coach. I mean, he's a duplicate Nick Saban. He's a make his tail quit and play for 4 quarters, be physical, be dominant, and don't give it up.
If TCU's Vendry Miller is healthy, then TCU has a better rushing attack than what Ohio State brought to the semifinals. So then if you want to compare the passing attacks, we're going to see whether TCU, the combination of Duggan, the offensive line, and the playmakers in space compared to Ohio State. Because those opportunities are there. If you're on point and you've got the quarterback who can deliver the ball and avoid the rush, and more than that, Ohio State's offensive line was able to protect, and you've got the receivers at that level, then you can make plays, score points.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll tell you what, I know you guys are going to be busy this weekend covering the game and getting out a lot of great content. We look forward to it, and may the better team win Monday night. I think, I don't know, there's a part of me that likes to see the SEC win, but I love a Cinderella story like what TCU's doing. So I guess I'll say go Horned Frogs.
All right. Well, we appreciate you being here, Ballard. Have a good one.
Thank you too, Mark. Thank you.
It's our buddy Ballard Sports Media, and we will keep it rolling here at the Voice of College Football. We've got not sure. Oh, not sure. That means George. George is here for us. George, we see a blur is what we've got right now. George,
Hi.
Are you with us?
I don't know. Yeah. Can you hear me?
I got you.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I didn't really comb my
Got you.
hair. I don't know if I'm ready. Just took
Hey,
my
you're
baseball
looking
cap
good.
off.
No.
I don't know why it says not sure. That's like my name on Google or something.
Well, that must be it right there.
It's like that movie. That movie, Idiocracy, the guy says not sure. Remember that?
No. All right, George, what do
Yeah.
you got for us, man?
I've guessed every game wrong all year. I haven't picked one. Like if I would have been gambling, I'd be bankrupt.
Missed them all.
Every
Well, this
game.
is your
I'm batting
last
1,000.
This is your last chance.
That's why I'm hardcore. I'm hardcore. George is going to win it all. If I could, I know if I pick TCU, George is going to win. So I'm 100% on Georgia for this one.
The only thing I don't
could
like
be
about
the
this
difference.
matchup is I don't like having a matchup where we're all pretty sure who's going to win. Would rather
Right.
have more of a toss-up game as the national championship. But we'll see. Maybe TCU
They're just
proves everyone wrong.
They are priming us for the 12 team and then the 16 team playoff. They want us to see that some 3-star team can come in and make it to the big game. And they've accomplished their goal. They don't have to let them win it, but they made it to the big game. So it just goes to show.
Was this all fixed?
I don't call it fixed. I call it scripted. Whatever's good for the game. They don't hand out billion-dollar TV contracts for a 10-7 game or a 6-3 game. You know.
I haven't looked at the TV ratings for the 2 semifinal games, except I got to think Ohio State and Georgia's was ridiculous. But
yeah, they were all-time highs. All-time
Both of
highs
them?
for TV
Yeah.
ratings.
Okay. Well, then I guess you can have a little school in there and people still show up if the game's good.
You know what? I don't see any benefit to proving that it's scripted. We might as well just leave it the way it is and joke with each other and talk trash. And because the second we're all positive it's scripted, it's going to take something from the game. It's not going to be as much fun to joke around. Although you still won't know who's going to win, even if it is scripted. You can still bet on it. Just you got to make that scenario in your head. Like, how's that game going to go? Who are they going to let win? That sort of thing.
Yeah. So now we're guessing and making predictions on what somebody else has determined.
It works for the WWF. They know it's scripted, but they still go and they cheer for their villain or their hero.
Please don't tell me, George, that this is possible, because the day that we determine that college football is fixed, then I have to shut all this down.
Well, let's just knock it off right now before we cross that threshold.
Yeah, I got bills to pay.
Exactly. You know what I did today? I was on with Pigskin Pete the other night, and he said
yes.
he wanted this picture that sits behind me. Check this out. Can you see that?
I see a blob of orange. That's all I can see.
It's a big box. It's a huge box. It's 41 inches by 40 inches. And I took it down to mail it to him because he said he wanted it. They wanted $95 to mail it to him. So that's the end of that. I brought it back home.
All righty.
It costs $95 to mail a picture to somebody nowadays. I tried. I'm not frozen, am I?
You are not frozen. I guess I'm frozen in responding to your story there. I didn't know what that had to do with the national championship game myself, but
oh, I'm sorry. That's what I did today. That's a different subject. I'm taking Georgia. There's no way a team of 3 stars is beating a team of 5 stars, and that's basically what we have going on here.
Yeah, you're a big SEC guy.
Yeah, I hate Georgia, but I'm not going to lie. I think they're going to cover the spread and win handily. Man, I don't even have any more Stetson Bennett jokes. Man, he's won what is he, 24-1 or something?
Yeah, Stetson Bennett's quite the legend.
He is. I predict he'll be back to Georgia next year on a special exemption or something. Get one more year.
This could be.
No. He'll be the quarterback coach next year.
You give him no shot in the NFL, huh?
Right. No, that ain't happening. And
third stringer?
He can hold a clipboard. He's big enough to hold a clipboard.
I believe he is. I think Stetson Bennett is going to be drawing a paycheck in the NFL holding a clipboard.
I hope so. I really do for him, for his sake. Why not? He could be a little Johnny Manziel type, I hate it. I hate it when he runs. It's just horrifying when he takes off.
He's a little smarter, it appears, than Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel just kind of threw it all away.
It's not a split. It's a cigarette.
I don't think Stetson's quite that stupid.
Mike 3883 said Stetson Bennett gives me Eli Manning vibes. That's funny.
Stetson Bennett and Eli Manning.
I would have never drawn that comparison.
No, I'm lost on that one. Well, Eli Manning, I'm guessing where he's going has kind of that duh vibe about him, but I don't get that from Stetson Bennett.
So what do you think the score will be at halftime? Like Georgia 24, TCU 7 or 10 maybe or something?
That actually sounds kind of reasonable.
Yeah, it does. Georgia could score on every possession. They could just run, pass. Run, pass.
Run every play pretty much. What I want to see is a colossal upset, is what I want to see. Okay, Georgia's just suddenly left us. So we're going to keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. We got our guy Robert on the line.
What's up?
Not too much. What's going on with you?
Not much. So go Dogs.
Are you confident?
Kind of. I kind of most about the game though. Did it shows have 8 injuries on it shows have 8 injuries.
Hello, Robert. What's your question?
I said that shows have 8 injuries.
I'm lost on that one. We'll go back to George. George is ready for it. George, what's going on? You staying with us this time?
Oh, am I back?
You're back.
Am I back?
Yes,
I changed my name. You see that?
You wouldn't be back as quickly this time. I do see your name. You wouldn't be back as quickly, but our previous caller made absolutely no sense. I could not understand what gibberish was coming out of his mouth, so we just ditched him.
I hate it when that happens.
He was mumbling
Hey,
something.
some guy in the chat just asked me. He wanted me to elaborate on the WWF being scripted, and I'm not going there, man. We all know professional wrestling is real.
Of course it's real.
Right?
Absolutely.
Of course it is. I used to get in fights in grade school over saying WWF wrestling was scripted. People wanted to fight. I'm sure I got in a couple fights over that.
George, you've got a couple years on me. I would think that the professional wrestling, my first thought and my first memory of professional wrestling was the old Georgia Championship Wrestling on TBS. That's the first pro wrestling I remember.
I was there with you watching that.
Yeah.
I can't believe it became a $1 billion industry. It just blows me away, man. God. What's worse than watching race cars go around and around and around and around and around for 8 hours? Professional wrestling is the only thing that can even touch it. Oh, my God. At least they had a reason to drive stock cars real fast. They were running for bootleggers. Explain professional wrestling, men in tights. I never figured that one out.
Got some folks here that want us to stay on point here. We do. This is our national championship game preview. Folks, we're going to have another one of these tomorrow, whether it's me and you just on the line with callers, or we're going to bring on some media guests, but we're going to do this again on a Sunday at some point.
Oh, man. So, George, I'm just guessing they'll score at least one touchdown in every quarter average. So that's 28, at least a couple field goals, 33, 34. They're going to win. Maybe TCU can make it an exciting game, right? They can score quick. Maybe they'll get lucky a couple of times. I don't know. There's no way they're going to win the game, though. Ohio State should have won. Georgia shouldn't be there. I was pulling for you, Mark. I really was.
Yeah, that was
like I said. I was wrong on every game. Yeah,
that was
guy missed the field goal. Can you believe it?
Yeah, he missed it. All right. All right, George, we're going to keep it moving here. We got callers piling up now. People have found the link, apparently.
All right, here we go. I'm going back to watching. Talk to you later. Bye.
All right, keep it moving here at the Voice of College Football. I want to remind everyone, when you shop Amazon, use the link in the description section of the videos. Go to any of the videos in the description section. It says Amazon in caps. Grab the link, put it somewhere where you will remember to use it when you shop on Amazon. I got to admit, for as much as I love watching college football, I'm not that pumped up for this game. I'll watch it, of course. We're going to be here. Should we do a watch party? Have to think about that. What, in a sense, I'm even more excited about are all the various content ideas. We're going to explode with content ideas once the off season hits. Looks like this camera is much too close. But going to explode with content ideas once we hit the off season. Of course, as soon as the national championship game is over, and then the next morning, and our buddy here, Michael Hogue, will be pleased to hear this. The next morning, we'll release our top 25 that actually makes sense, the final. And then a couple days later, when we tabulate the entire deal, we'll go with our 1 through 131 rankings. Michael, how you doing tonight?
Good, Mark, and yourself?
I am doing well.
See, we got to overrule you. After the top 25
Yes.
comes out, it's mandatory you got to take a week vacation.
Oh, no.
Mark, you're working yourself too hard, man. When was the last time you actually took a vacation?
It depends what you call a vacation.
To where if we have to, we will come and get the FBI to confiscate your stuff for a week.
Well, I appreciate your concern. I had to back off those lights. I appreciate your concern, Michael. I'm doing just fine. It's funny you say that because
with you.
Actually, I feel better right this second than I have in about 3 days, because I actually here about 3 days ago just started, having aches all over my body. I had headaches. I had an earache. I had all sorts of problems.
Vertigo?
Not vertigo. I just had an earache and I was just worn out. Like, I couldn't get out of bed this morning until like 12:30, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Like, I physically, and so I had people telling me I needed to take a COVID test.
Mark, you know what that's telling you? Your body's telling you?
I took a COVID test and it came back positive.
Oh, okay.
So I tested positive, but hey, if this is the extent of the effect, then it's not. I have felt worse in my life, but I got to tell you that I was doing some live streams the other night, like Wednesday, and my back and my hips had so much pain. I was like squirming in my chair. I couldn't wait to get through. But I feel so much better right now. But I appreciate your concern, Michael. But man, I got so much great content on the way after we hit the off season. Heck, I know. We'll get after it.
You gotta take some time to let your body recover, Mark.
We will.
Anyway,
yes.
I think it's gonna be a good game. I think I'm picking Georgia to win 38-24, but I think it's going to be a one-score game, if not maybe tied going to the fourth quarter. But the thing is, though, are you like with most people going to be shocked if TCU gets it done Monday night?
I'm not going to be shocked. I will be somewhat surprised. I don't know where I'm going to go with this score yet. I'll make that prediction sometime tomorrow or Monday. Your prediction seems pretty reasonable. I know that 37-24 popped in my head at one point here in the last few days.
Mm-hmm.
If you really look at this TCU Michigan game, we tend to think that was like a TCU kind of game, and it was much more so than a Michigan style of game. But TCU doesn't play those kind of games. They're more in the mid 30s. Look at their games against Oklahoma State, Kansas State. Look at the Big 12 championship game. The Texas game was only a 17-10 game. They're not playing crazy 48-45 games every week. So your 38-24 looks pretty solid.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I was wondering stuff like that. Now, if because the only thing that concerns me though, and he hasn't really had a bad game yet in the last few weeks, Stetson Bennett. But do you kind of keep in the back of your mind, like, okay, he's kind of somewhat due for a bad game? Or is he like with Max Duggan and they're both on a mission right now?
Who, between Duggan and Bennett?
Yeah.
Which one scheduled for a bad game?
Bennett.
Well, he can have one more so than Max Duggan can. Mm-hmm. So Max Duggan needs to play better than Stetson Bennett, because his team needs him more.
Okay. But no, like, I was just wondering and stuff like that. So
it's an interesting comparison, though, because if we had one person take on an argument that Stetson Bennett's better, or took the other side, Max Duggan's better, I think it's a great debate. I don't think there's a clear-cut better quarterback between these two.
Not bad. No, I was just wondering stuff like that now. And stuff like that. I know you're not much into college basketball either, are you?
Oh, I was for a long time.
Just wondering stuff like that. Now, I know you're going to do football, but is there a chance you might do something for a tournament?
Yeah, I really don't see myself doing that.
All right.
We did something like a couple times. We did a couple live streams just because we were trying to push our Notre Dame channel past 1,000 subs, and they were playing a tournament game. We did that last year, but yeah, we're the voice of college football. I have no interest in. I couldn't name you one college basketball player right now. I've never heard of one college basketball player.
All right, I gotta ask you this though, and I won't keep you long because I know you got a gazillion people. I know you was a sports reporter both for radio, TV, and stuff like that. But what got you? And you had to cover everything. But what made you focus more on college football than the other sports?
Well, when I was working for TV stations, 2 different TV stations before I went to ESPN, of course, I was a sportscaster, so I had to cover everything. And at that point, football, I have made this statement, my standard statement throughout my entire life. So all of you, if asked, what is Mark Rogers' favorite sport, you would obviously say college football, right? Well, my standard line for my entire life has been college football, the NFL, and Major League Baseball are tied for first. I don't even know how to distinguish them. Now, that has changed a lot in the last couple of years. I don't watch baseball right now, and I watch a lot less of the NFL, and it doesn't – I still enjoy watching the NFL, but it doesn't – I'm not, like, engrossed in it, and I don't know the teams and the rosters like I once did. But and I always enjoyed college basketball. I really enjoyed college basketball, watched a ton, and I was very fortunate to cover the NCAA tournament a number of times and Final Four and a ton of SEC tournaments and a lot of great college basketball in the SEC for years. Basically, when I started this YouTube channel, the reason I called it Mark Rogers TV was because I didn't know what sport I would lean toward. Like if you go to the very beginning of my videos, I've got baseball videos, I've got NFL draft videos, I've got NFL videos. And so I didn't know exactly. I was just going to talk about whatever sports I wanted to. But then I quickly determined, I can't cover all of this. I'm going to turn off a baseball fan if they watch a baseball video and they think, oh, this guy talks baseball, I like this video, and then they don't see a baseball video for 4 weeks. Well, they're not going to watch the channel. And I just figured, well, college football is the best discussion sport, in my opinion. And especially since there is no clear-cut way to determine the champion, that's always a great debate. So I just determined that college football was the way to go.
All right. Well, I'm going to let you go because I'm sure you got a gazillion other callers and stuff like that. Are you doing anything between now and Monday as far as live streams? Or is
we Monday are going to do this exact thing sometime on Sunday. I don't know exactly when because there's quite a few other media folks that we're going to bring on here. So at whatever point is best for them, we're going to be back here on Sunday.
All right. Because I didn't know if you were going to do like your stream to where we can call in and out or Tuesday because there's a couple other things I want to talk about. But
oh, sure. We'll be here. I'll do a live stream on Sunday. I'm going to do a live stream on Monday, and we will be on before the game.
Unfortunately, I won't be able to do the live stream unless you do a 12-hour stream because I'll be at SoFi on Monday afternoon and to Monday night and stuff like the early Monday morning. So Tuesday morning.
Michael, I did not realize that you were going to be on site.
Yep. Second year in a row, I'm working with your former employer.
Very good. You must have done a heck of a job last year.
Yep. Now the question is, I'm not sure how many Emmys, but I'm going for Emmy number 2, sir.
Absolutely. That's phenomenal. Good for you.
Yep. All right. Hey, get better soon.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
See ya. Take care.
Yes, I am doing just fine. So thank you for that, Michael. We appreciate it. All right. Michael working with Worldwide Leader there on site. Good stuff. All right. Next up here at the Voice of College Football, we got Larry on the line. Larry, what's going on?
Not much, Mark. How about yourself?
I'm good.
Good. So yeah, I'm not super excited for the game. I am, but I'm not. I hate to say it, but I'm actually rooting for Georgia. So
right, Utah fan rooting for Georgia. Is that your heart telling you to do that, or do you have a logical reason to do that.
I have a disdain for the Big 12 now because it's like it's just a Pac-12 Big 12 feud thing going on where, they're the greatest, they're the third best conference now, I guess. And so so I just want them to be shut up. There you go.
I've kind of picked up on that. I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know if that's because of the other two becoming so big, meaning the Big Ten and the SEC, that there's a inferiority complex
Yeah.
setting in that.
Yeah, I remember when Texas and Oklahoma were going to leave, we all felt bad for them, and a lot of people weren't opposed to them coming over, and it was just like, okay, USC's president or whatever said no and shut it down, and it was like, all right, and then they'd end up leaving, and either way, long story short, yeah, they're just ignorant to us, and so, and that's why I'm rooting for the SEC, which would never happen. So
I didn't think so. Okay.
And I'm really curious to see. I was very impressed with TCU's lines of offense and defense in the trenches. They're a lot tougher than I thought they were. I thought Michigan was going to push them around pretty good, and that didn't really happen. So interesting to see the game plans for Georgia, how they're going to attack TCU. And I would imagine they're gonna give them everything on the ground and in the air. So,
well, I know the one thing that TCU did up front defensively was move their line around. So they were moving targets. Now, if that was all there was to stopping a prolific ground game, then everyone would do that. So there's certainly more to it than just that. But I know that was kind of step one in their process of not allowing Michigan to just come off man for man and just kind of be road graders down the field and, use their quickness and the unexpectedness of being, where they weren't expected to be, and to keep them guessing. And so I would expect them to do, if they're doing self-evaluation, self-scouting, then they're going to watch their tendencies from the last game and change them up a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, Michigan hit quite a few over the top shots on TCU. Michigan hit a lot of over the top. I mean, what was there, 2 touchdowns that came up just a hair short that were explosive over the top plays? I know the one was.
Yeah,
so
the one that got called back.
Right. And
out of the end zone. Yeah.
And so, it's going to be curious to see, because I mean, even though I don't think, like you said, Stetson's not great, he's good. I think he can still throw a ball pretty far. So he should be able to beat him over the top for sure. I don't know. I'm just wondering if TCU is going to have enough of a throwing game to be able to compete, because I mean, Ohio State did really good. I mean, they did better than Tennessee, and Tennessee was supposed to be this really out of the world passing offense, and they didn't have a ton of success where Ohio State did. And TCU is nowhere in the realm of those two. So it's good. I'm it's going to be curious to see how these lines of scrimmage hold up. So I think that's the biggest part of this game I want to watch. I'm going to be watching the trenches more than anything.
Georgia's defense faced what I would consider to be 2 elite or near elite offenses in the regular season in Oregon that finished anywhere between 5 and 10 in most of the offensive metrics. And then Tennessee, which finished 1 or 2. Actually, Tennessee, even though I most of the season considered either Ohio State or Tennessee to have the best offense in the country, Tennessee statistically was better than Ohio State. Well, when they played Georgia, they did next to nothing. They lost 27-14. The second touchdown was completely meaningless right at the end of the game. So they scored a touchdown. And so what Ohio State was, and then what LSU accomplished in the SEC championship game, you had to kind of raise an eyebrow to, because they gained all that yardage and points in garbage time playing from behind. So Ohio State's been the only team that's done it start to finish during meaningful snaps the entire game, been able to show that they can move the ball. So,
and honestly, I think if they would have had Harrison all the way till the end, there's no way you could convince me that Ohio State, with Harrison on the field in that last minute, doesn't pick up another 10, 20 yards to give that field goal kicker a better shot. So
yes, we will never know.
We will never know, but I think Harrison going out, which I know that's a different game and this is a TCU. To me, that was targeting a guy that is standing there, isn't moving, and gets hit in the helmet by another guy's helmet. I don't care if it was the side of his helmet or the crown. I mean, the reason targeting is there is to protect both players. And a helmet to helmet is targeting when a guy is just standing there. I get why they didn't call it. That would have been a very pivotal point of the game. And, there would have been a lot of controversy, but I don't know. That was Ohio State's game. They should actually be playing TCU, but I don't care. I'll take Georgia to beat TCU just out of Big 12 disgust. There you go. So that's my 2 cents.
So you would be rooting, obviously, for Ohio State against TCU. You'd be rooting for anybody against a Big 12 team.
Yeah, because I don't want to hear, as much as the SEC pounds their chest, I think they've earned it to a degree. But I can't. Yeah, I don't want to hear any Big 12 folks. They're already claiming Cincinnati's got a CFP appearance as a Big 12. And it's like, you didn't play a Power 5 schedule, and trust me, I'm a Utah fan. We were the original BCS busters and we won 2 of them. If we would have had to go through a gauntlet, as we found out, by the time you get to the end of the season, if you don't have those few star players that got you there, you're not going to get any further. It is what it is. I mean, Alabama losing their 2 top wide receivers had an effect on the national championship. Ohio State losing Harrison. You're talking NFL guys. They make a difference when they're not in the game. They really do.
Yeah. And you're just talking about the last drive without Harrison. They missed him the entire fourth quarter. So
yeah, exactly. So
the other drives would have looked like.
Yeah. So I just don't want to hear from these Big 12 people. I don't. Yeah. So, Cincinnati, we've got to, and then they were claiming BYU and you're like, oh my God. Okay. All right. Go play a Power 5 schedule.
Larry,
Cincinnati.
we need to get some kind of Big 12, Pac-12 forum together. I'd like to hear more about this.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, everybody in the Pac-12 felt bad about all those teams that were sitting there, and it was like, man, I was all for like, hey, bring them in. Let's get it going bigger. And so 8 out of the 12 schools said yes. I can guarantee you the 4 schools resided all in one state that said no, and 2 of them are gone. And they just treat the rest of the Pac-12 like redheaded stepchildren, and they call us names, and and it's like, we weren't against you guys, but now you're against us, and it's like, okay, whatever. So just like who was it, Tony, like Tony and I said, you know what, if we don't have to go to Lubbock and if we don't have to go to Waco, and fine, we're not, we got enough tumbleweeds out in the desert. We don't need to go to more. So fine. But anyway, that was my 2 cents. Yeah, I'm just real interested in the trench play. I really want to see that. So.
Okay, Larry.
All right, bud.
Appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
Have a good one.
Right. You too.
And we will remind everyone that we plan on doing the same on Sunday. Time to be determined, because we've got a number of media guests that we've reached out to jump on. So at whatever point is most advantageous for their schedules collectively, then we will set that time as we did this particular time. So we will be live sometime TBD on Sunday, and then also on Monday as well, sometime during the day, and then prior to kickoff of Georgia and TCU. And I know a lot of you folks love these watch parties. We'll have to think that one over. We got Rob on the line. Rob, what's going on?
Hey, Mark. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
So good. I'm glad you're feeling better too. Yeah, I don't know if I agree with the last take that you're rooting for TCU because they're in the Big 12 as a Pac-12 fan. I get it, I guess, that you don't want to but to me, it's more of just a classic underdog tale. That's the way I look at it. Of course, then again, I'm a Notre Dame fan, so I don't have a conference anyway. So, but I you know what I mean. It's like TCU for me. I'm definitely rooting for them because they're the underdog, and Georgia's already won. You know, they won last year. Let someone else have it. You know, it would make a lot of people happy, and I think Georgia, just the fact that they really should have lost the last game. You know, they're and I do think they're favored. I think they'll win. But if I was a betting man, which I'm not, thankfully, but if I was, I would bet money on Georgia. But I would rather see TCU win this game, and I'll be watching. Actually, you're doing a watch party. I might just watch your YouTube again there. But or are you doing that on Patreon?
We would do it right here.
Okay.
Well,
yeah. So have you guys figured out what was causing was it the background noise that was causing your streams to get taken down?
Oh, yeah. That would have been the it picking up the commercials. So
Yeah.
I'll have to do something about that. But that just requires me to mute the mic during commercial breaks, or just not mute the mic, mute the TV. So to knock out the commercial music during the breaks. So what does that look like? All of a sudden it just goes black.
You know what? When I was watching the other day, and I wasn't seeing the stream get taken down. I know you had mentioned it getting taken down, but for me it was up the entire time, so it's kind of weird.
Oh.
But I was just wondering. You saw that there was some issues there, so I was just wondering if you figured out what
we would have had a better crowd in.
Yeah.
YouTube still won't. This is what's crazy about YouTube, and this will be my quick spiel on YouTube, is that so these streams are blocked. And not that anybody's going to go back and watch a watch party from a week ago, but I still want them listed on my video, on my stream of videos on my channel. But they're blocked currently, but they gave me an option to edit out all the commercial music issues, and it had the times for all of them. And I went through that process and I edited all those out. And this was however long ago that was, almost a week ago. And it's still taking them forever to reinstate the video. Anyway.
that sounds like a very YouTube thing,
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I assume you're kind of. I know you've said you're rooting for TCU, but for you, I know you said you're not super interested in the game. I kind of feel the same way because I think we all kind of expect Georgia to just kind of handle business. But what would it take for you to start getting more into the game as you're watching it? Would TCU have to be competitive through the first half, like maybe take a lead during the first half, or you kind of be like, what's your thought on that?
So first off, I'm going to mention why I'm rooting for TCU. Number one, I just think it's a great story. Number two, it's obvious to expect Georgia to continue to be a player for the national championship beyond this season. It's less likely that TCU is going to be a player in the national championship race in years to come. So this seems like more of lightning in a bottle. Let's see if they can do it, rather than, okay, is Georgia going to win 5 national titles in the next 20 years or 4 or what? As opposed, it just seems it's not going to be nearly as special for Georgia, even though they've only won 1 in the last 40 years. Just this current state of the program seems to be dictating that they're going to be in it over and over and over and over again for the foreseeable future. And then lastly, just for the debate of, and in terms of what do we as college football fans talk about all during the off season? You see all sorts of arguments and debates about program status. Is your program better than my program? Well, how many national championships do you have? I've got 7. We've got 7. You've got 6. Our winning percentage is this. Our record during the college football playoff is this. And all those comparisons, when Ohio State loses to Georgia as opposed to beating Georgia and then winning a national championship, all those things add up in terms of all these debates that we have comparing these teams and these programs historically. So TCU certainly not going to be in that debate against the likes of Alabama and Georgia and Ohio State, etc. So giving them a national championship doesn't upset that debate.
No, I totally hear you on that. Although I will say this, part of you kind of look at it and say, well, you're rooting for Georgia just a little bit because that's the team that beat you, so at least you could say we lost to the champ? Or does that not really matter in your mind at all?
I get that viewpoint, but I don't buy into it myself. I don't take that on, but I get it. I understand it.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing about the Pac-12 versus the Big 12, to me, it's kind of funny anyway, because when you really break it down, that's not going to be that important in the next couple of years. I mean, two of the biggest names from the Pac-12 are going to the Big 10, right? Got USC especially, and then Oklahoma's going to the SEC, Texas. So I mean, it's going to be an interesting landscape with these conferences, within the next couple of years. Anyway, I wonder what the rivalry is going to look like then. I mean, who's left in the Pac-12 after USC leaves? You got Cal. I'm just being facetious. Washington's a really good program, and I think actually I was looking at some of the preseason, way too early preseason rankings for next year, and some people have Washington like in the top 10, and I could see that. I guess they had a really good year, 11 wins. So, and it's funny watching those, reading up on those rankings. Teams are wildly all over the place. Like I think Brett McMurphy's list had FSU as the number 4 team next year. But I guess I won't get too much into that. It's a college football championship show. But
I will be doing the same thing. I wait until the championship game's over. But yeah, I think people typically want to get ahead of the curve and try to figure out who's going to be the next team to rise up. And Florida State's going to be a very popular team based on how they finished this year and based on the likes of Jordan Travis coming back. Jared Verse just announced here in the last 24 hours that he's coming back. So Florida State's going to be a chic pick for a lot of people.
Well, plus the ACC is looking more open than it's ever looked with Clemson being down. Yeah. And Cade Klubnik isn't looking. I mean, I'm not saying he's not going to work, but I haven't seen enough out of him to really say I feel comfortable with where Clemson's going right now in the quarterback room department. And yeah, Jordan Travis is phenomenal. I watched some games with him this year. He was doing things that just had my jaw on the floor. I think he's a legit Heisman candidate in my mind, for next year. He's certainly in the discussion of like Heisman candidates, in my opinion. Speaking of which, real quick, if you don't mind, who do you think is going to play quarterback for Ohio State next year?
Well, I would love to know what Ryan Day thinks of Kyle McCord, like what he truly believes about Kyle McCord's ability to lead a team, because otherwise I would think that Ohio State would be much like Notre Dame. So Notre Dame could have come back with Tyler Buchner, who's proven to be a pretty capable quarterback, but they saw the opportunity with Sam Hartman to upgrade the position, possibly significantly, and go for it. So, yeah, we haven't seen Kyle McCord play meaningful football. Would he be a good quarterback? I don't think there's any question about. There's a little question about whether he would be a top 3 or 4 quarterback in the Big Ten, but that's typically not good enough for Ohio State. So, yeah, I would have to survey the country to think about, okay, who could possibly, who could they possibly entice to coming to play there, to somebody that's proven?
Yeah, that's the interesting question about next year is you got all these teams that are having quarterback, vacancies that need to be filled. You got Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. Michigan's returning with JJ. And then, yeah, we picked up Sam Hartman, but Hartman played in the claw offense, right? He played in a very different offense than what Notre Dame's going to be running. And in all honesty, I mean, I'm not an idiot. Wake Forest had some studs on that receiving core. You know, Perry was just great. I mean, I don't think anybody on Notre Dame is really quite as good as what some of the players they had over there. However, we do have a pretty decent wide receiver core and some good tight ends that are kind of untested. But I think the big thing about Notre Dame is our offensive line and our running back room is stacked. So that's going to help him open up the offense just there. But yeah, I think we have a really good shot to beat Clemson next year. Ohio State is a question mark because you guys probably should beat us. I don't think we're quite there yet. Our defense needs some work. But I think we'll play a lot better than we did this year. The question for me with Ohio State next year is their quarterback, and USC is going to be a tough game too because that team's only going up. Lincoln Riley said, and I believe him, that this year's squad was the least talented squad he's going to have, and I mean, Caleb Williams is just a magician with the football. He's another Heisman guy that's going to be top 3 Heisman contenders in my opinion. Going without seeing the body of work next year. But yeah, I think some people are jumping all over the place, saying like I saw some other YouTube channels saying Notre Dame's a title contender. It's like, nah, let's pump the brakes here, guys. Like they could possibly sniff the playoffs, but they got to go at least 2-3 against USC, Ohio State, and Clemson, and that's a tough road to hoe. So. Yeah. And honestly, some of these teams like Georgia, they've got a pretty easy schedule next year. Ohio State's got they've got kind of the same thing. They got to go through Michigan, Notre Dame. Penn State's going to be good next year. They got to go through them. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how some of this stuff plays out next year.
Yeah. People that say that, are they just responding and reacting to the Sam Hartman pickup, or are they truly analyzing the roster and looking at, personnel gains and losses?
I think it's a bit of both. I certainly think people are making way too much out of Sam Hartman. I'm don't get me wrong, I'm super excited because he is a stud quarterback. But the question is, how much of he's a guy that was playing in a very specific offense that we're not going to be playing. We're not going to be playing that slower claw offense. We're going to be doing a lot of and we're going to be doing more running. It's so and the receivers aren't there either. Like we don't have anybody on the level that Perry was for Wake Forest. So it'll be interesting to see. I'm thinking that he's going to add some, like maybe 5 points per game more, I think. But does that mean that we're going to get, a run at the title? I don't know. I'd like to be optimistic, but Notre Dame needs some other things, especially on the defensive line, before we're going to be, title contenders, in my opinion. So, but it'll be a fun next year to watch. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think we've got maybe more possible title contenders in play next year than we have in the past.
That's I mean, there's so many good teams. Like I said, Washington USC, Ohio State, Michigan they're not going anywhere. Penn State's not going anywhere. Then you got obviously the SEC, Alabama, Georgia, LSU. They're going to be better. I mean, Tennessee, they're going to be interesting to watch as well. But yeah, in my opinion, next year is stacked. I think it's going to be a brutal battle. I wish we had the expanded playoff next year.
Yeah, I am with you.
But anyway, I should let you go so you can get some more callers on here.
Well, I appreciate it, Rob.
Yep. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you. Yep. All right. We appreciate everybody being here. And Tim, thank you so much for posting Larry's super chat there in the ticker, because once I saw that pop up, and then I searched, there we go. Thank you so much for that, Tim, because I searched all over the place. I couldn't find it. It disappeared from my feed. I was scrolling up and down all over the place. There we go. Larry, thank you so much for that. Great show. Back the pack. And I believe that's quiet, the Big 12. Oh, and quite the Big 12, Georgia. Maybe we mixed up our E's and I's and T's. Quiet, the Big 12, Georgia. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate you. Tim, are you looking to come on? Here we go. Tim, what's going on?
I had to come in because we don't have any Georgia. This is weird. We don't have any Georgia callers. We got lots of guys in the chat talking Georgia, but no Georgia callers. And I don't think I've ever seen any TCU fans, to be honest.
TCU fans on this channel. Yeah. We should do a shout out for TCU fans.
Yeah. I mean, if I was a Georgia fan, I'd be in here talking about my team, right? I just don't know why these wallflowers are afraid to come in and say hi to Mark. But
yeah, just say hi, even if you don't have a whole lot to say or whatever, or don't want to stir things up. At least, it would be nice to hear from some people that support us with their views, but don't say hi.
But I'm not going to talk Georgia or TCU. So if they don't want to fill your area, well, let's talk some USC football then.
Sure, we can.
So did you see the Marshawn Lloyd pickup?
Yeah,
I did. Richard?
I did. Have you had a chance to watch him play at all? I have. Not that I was like focusing on my evaluation of him per se, but I've watched him play.
Yeah, I've gone back. I will admit I did not watch a lot of. I watched the Clemson game, but I didn't watch a lot of Gamecock football this year. I'm not gonna lie. But I did like that. And then George, thank you very much for Michael Tarquin, the left tackle. I shouldn't have played right or left tackle. I don't know. But 6'6", 290. That's a helpful piece. And then once Riley gets done tampering, we're gonna have apparently Mark. Riley's on the phone to Marvin Harrison. Yeah.
That's
daily apparently. Listen to the chat. Riley's got nothing better to do than to do recruiting violations and call potential players, because that's what he does.
Well, he did that with Jordan Addison, right?
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
And probably a couple of bags, McDonald's bags too.
Yes. So whoever the best wide receiver is in college football every year, that's going to be the phone call that's going to be made.
What I don't understand is how some of these fans haven't figured this out yet. Like, there is nothing. It is not tampering or a violation. I think it should be. But at this point, there is no violation if you have, let's say, Caleb Williams call him up on the phone and say, "Hey, man, you want to play some ball?" That is, and then you want to take that a step further. You have Lincoln Riley say, "Hey, why don't you give your buddy Marvin Harrison a call? We would love to have him." And so, even that would technically probably be illegal. I don't know, but who's going to prove that kind of thing? But that's, to anyone out there that thinks that's not happening daily, I'm not sure, how the global awards be going to you, or if you want to buy a bridge, Mark has one for sale.
I can't imagine that anything that we have confirmed, known about violations in the past, or anything that we could conceive that's being done, is only done by one coach. That one coach does it, nobody else does it. I can't conceive of that.
It reeks of fear, so I love it. I love it when fan bases are afraid. I didn't like it when fan bases were like USC, and then they would just start laughing because they had every right to do that for a couple of years under Helton. But now that they're starting to accuse us, hey, it sounds familiar. We start winning, we start getting accused of everything that everyone else is doing. So I guess it's a good sign for us. I don't know. So, but also Dorian Singer. So let's just, obviously I'm joking about Marvin Harrison, but you got Singer and you've got Tarquin, and you got Lloyd. Add that to, I'm not sure if you follow recruiting as much as I do, but we have Zachariah Branch is the best receiver in the country. Guy's like literally amazing. He's like a Reggie Bush. Like I wouldn't throw that word around, just lightly, but
yeah, that's
that guy with the ball in his hands. It's
blasphemy.
like everyone else is in slow motion. And then Mekhi Lemon, another 5. So we're getting 2 5-star receivers and Singer to go along with who we have already.
So Brian's making the comment here that it is a violation when they're not in the portal. The main point was the hypocrisy of the NCAA, not whether or not USC did it. But I believe Tim is making the point that the technicality is the contact made by not the coach, but by somebody else, just a buddy on the team, a player.
It could be, any number of things. It could be somebody talking to a 7-on-7 coach that they still stay close to. It could be a family member. It's absurd that people are so naive, or they just want to really point fingers at 1 or 2 schools. This literally happens. Name your school. Your school has reached out to people through these channels. I guarantee USC has done it, but I guarantee so has every school in the country. So yes. I just don't understand this whole they're getting good players, they must be tampering. Or maybe he has a really elite offensive system that might attract some receivers and quarterbacks. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, and if you're Marvin Harrison, you're already in an elite offense, but now you have the potential to be playing with a unproven quarterback versus going to play with the best quarterback in the country in an elite system. So there may be some allure there that's pretty obvious. But yeah, and I don't know that they will. I don't see any conceivable way to legislate against what we're talking about right here.
Yeah.
Student athletes talking to each other. We cannot.
No, they can't. I don't believe you can actually tell them. I don't know. Maybe you could. Maybe you could make a rule that if you are on scholarship, you cannot contact other scholarship players. I mean, I guess you could do that.
Seriously?
I think you could.
You're not allowed to talk to.
No, you can talk to them, but you're not allowed. Well, a coach can talk to another player. They're allowed to talk. They just can't talk. Hey, we got a spot open, at our Z position. You want to come on and come to our school? We got a Heisman quarterback. You can't do that, but there's nothing against Riley talking to a player. You're allowed to talk to players. You just can't approach them about a position on your roster. I'm saying as far as I don't think you'll be able to enforce it. Let's face it, the NCAA can't enforce crap anyway, right? So I mean, they're just be opening up a can of worms. And the whole idea with NIL now and the one-time transfer, etc. This is what comes from that, right? It's you can just leave when your roster, like you just said, when your quarterback might be unproven and you got a chance to go play for a Heisman quarterback that you're going to get a lot of catches from. That is alluring in itself.
There it is.
Yeah, I just thought that would be funny to bring that up. It's all literally what other teams are tampering except for USC? No, I'm saying is like in the national media, in the social media, the only name I always hear is USC and Lincoln Riley, and I find it kind of funny actually.
Yeah, just like people latch on to whatever the lightning rod person is, team, depending on the topic. Just like when Texas A&M built up the #1 recruiting class in 2022, that they were the main focus of. They must be the only one buying players. It's Texas A&M because they just built this amazing recruiting class. Nobody else is doing this right now. Texas A&M is the culprit.
Well, anyone that followed football, about 15 years ago, knew that the Big Ten and the SEC were terrified of one school and one school only. And I'll stand by that.
Tulane.
And they had the NCAA take them down. So, I mean, there was one thing staying in the way of the SEC doing what they've done for the past 15 years. It was one school, in my opinion. Yeah, terrified. Absolutely. John DeLon, laugh all you want, man. You should be grateful, John, that Pete Carroll didn't smoke you guys in 2003, because guess what? He would have crushed that LSU team. You guys would not have that title if the #1 team in the country was allowed to play that BCS game. Yes. That was Pete Carroll's probably third best offense and second best defense.
It would have been a heck of a game. I'm not saying that they wouldn't have. I'm just saying I'm not sure. In no way am I sure of who would have won that game.
Well, that they were #1 in both polls, and the BCS computers decided to leave them out. That was quite interesting. Oh, look, we're getting some calls. Nice.
Well, we got Brian. Brian's back in here.
Nothing's for sure. I would think that, Georgia is not a sure thing, right? But they're most likely going to win this game. And then that's how I see the same equivalency of USC playing LSU or Oklahoma in 2003.
Well,
without a doubt.
Oklahoma was not up to playing LSU. They only lost by a touchdown technically, but if you watch that game, the game control went completely to LSU in that game.
Well, they definitely weren't up for playing USC the next year with all their guys back, Oklahoma. That's what I'm saying. USC won that one 55-19, and that was it. They probably could have picked the number there. And that was an Oklahoma team bringing back all of their stars. And a year later, with a little year more seasoning, and imagine a year earlier playing an LSU team that beat them by a touchdown. That's why I'm saying that. I don't think they were on the same page. You know, that 2003 team beat a very good Navarre and Michigan offense. It was and a good defense. That Michigan defense was stout, and they won that game. That was a great game. Tim, where are USC at with NIL collectives? David Greenfield. We still do not have a collective. We don't have the booster run collectives that most of the big boys have, and it's hurting them in recruiting. They need to get on that. But USC administration is staying very close to the letter of the law. And USC has tried. There's been called Student Body Right, I think was the name of the booster collective that they tried starting up. And the USC administration said, we want nothing to do with them. And they put outside pressure on it to get it shut down. And in the end, it just never got off the ground. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know what they're doing. But it's cost them a couple linemen. I'll tell you that. I'm sure we'd have a couple more defensive and offensive linemen if we had that in place.
But these guys have to be signing with USC knowing that there are NIL opportunities, even though there's not a organized collective.
Yes, they're getting deals. I mean, Caleb and I'm sure all these guys are getting deals, but it's because you're in Los Angeles, you know. And I'm sure these aren't just out of the benefit of their heart, or I don't think it's a return on investment thing. I know that these NIL deals are probably somewhere along the line. There are some USC boosters that are fronting this money, but there is not an actual collective that's saying, "Hey, buddy, we've got a $1 million thing ready for you to go. Let's go." And we've all pulled up our booster money and we're ready to go. We don't have one of those collectives yet.
Yeah. Well, we all keep waiting for someone to get a hold of all of this mess and pull it together and put down some guidelines that can be enforceable and that are reasonable and, again, more so enforceable. But I don't know where that initiative is going to come from.
All right, we missed Steve Deese's burner. Agree, disagree. My top 10: Georgia, Ohio State, Alabama, TCU, Oregon, Utah, Penn State, LSU, Kansas State, Washington.
Is this like next year's top 10?
I think he's thinking after the game tomorrow.
After the game tomorrow.
Let us know, burner. Let us know if you mean now or preseason next year.
So
because I think Oregon at 5.
Yeah, they lost 3 games.
I don't know. This might be next year. Maybe they're saying Nix is coming back. I think it's kind of odd. No, I think that USC will probably be the favorite to win the Pac-12. So if this is for next year, I think you're not going to have 3 Pac-12 teams ahead of them. But if you're talking about this year, Oregon and Utah ended the year with a loss. This must be for next year.
Yeah, it's got to be for next year.
You got Penn
LSU's too high. Yeah.
And you got Utah ahead of Penn State. I mean, so this must be next year. Anyway, yeah. All right, you got Brian. I'll hang out in the background. I just wanted to have a couple laughs about the perception of all the tampering that's going on.
I know you love that topic. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah.
Brian, what's going on?
Let me talk to Tim real quick, man.
Oh,
I'm here.
You guys go to it. I'm gonna get myself a water and
real quick. I'm not saying USC is doing. I'm not saying USC is doing anything. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying is, if we're gonna launch investigations over Harbaugh paying for a burger, right? And we're not. And my main criticism is the NCAA, not USC. I don't have any problem.
Can I stop you? I'm not going to stand here talking about the integrity of the NCAA. You think I, a USC fan, talk about the integrity of the NCAA? Feel free. Go ahead. All you want.
Okay, so then we agree. Like, I got no issues with what USC is or isn't doing. When I brought that up, I was criticizing the NCAA. Like, if you got other supposed allegations going on that could be far more serious than Harbaugh buying a $5 burger for a commit, I think that should be investigated on a consistent level. That was my thing.
Well, here's my point on that. I think that they've been neutered to a level, and now you got a head coach telling them to go kick rocks when they're asking questions, and he basically is saying, "I'm not going to answer your questions." I think that's why they're having a little fit about this.
Yes.
Right? If you just said, "Yeah, about the burger,"
Yeah.
probably would have been a small violation. That would be the end of it. But it was his reaction to it, which forced them to come back with their response. And I don't
yeah,
know
that
if they can enforce it. I don't know what kind of teeth they have as far as being able to enforce anything at this point, right? But it's just more like, again, I lived in England for 5 years, and the joke was like the United States is freeze, wham, wham, right? In England, it's like freeze, or you'll freeze again, because they have what are they gonna do, right? And that's kind of like the NCAA is like a British Billy. They got nothing. What are they gonna do? Yell at you? Okay, good, you've been yelled at, but what can they do to enforce it?
But
Trying to
look,
think of
I
the
agree that
last program. I was trying to think of the last program that had NCAA violations leveled against it.
Ohio State.
Ohio State 10, 11 years ago?
It was for the same thing, is what I meant. It was literally for like a very
No,
similar
I'm
thing.
talking about the last, to Tim's point about the NCAA's authority at this point. What if they levied, Tennessee, Jeremy Pruitt, they were in trouble. I don't know what that ever turned out to be. There's a whole thing with LSU and the way Les Miles conducted that, and there's awful stuff that's come out about the way LSU's been run and all sorts of incidents there.
Wasn't there a Bill Self situation?
Not a long time ago.
Yeah, and he cut down nets. I mean, there you go. Which
is why I get why Harbaugh told him to F off. Like you're launching this like investigation over a $5 burger. Meanwhile, you got the LSU situation. You got all the situation within the SEC itself. You got far more serious things going on that you're just like, okay, whatever. And then you come over and inquire about this burger purchase, and I understand the frustration that he would have in that situation. I think it's perfectly understandable why you would be like, really? Are you kidding me right now?
So is that the only? So have they come out with their list of allegations? Have they come out with the report yet of what they're accused of?
They haven't come out. I don't think so, but that's like the leaked information of what it was. It was basically. Go ahead.
Well, because here's my concern for you as a Michigan fan. And to be honest with you, I want a strong Notre Dame, a strong Michigan, and a strong Ohio State, because it's good if you guys are all cannibalizing that region, in my book, as USC coming into the Big Ten. So I will start with the fact I don't want anything to happen to you guys. But what I will say flat out is that if that's all it was, even Harbaugh being the head case that Harbaugh is, I think that someone would have advised them, just tell them what you did. It's a minor infraction and we can move on. I think that there may be more to it. I'm not reading into it. I'm just saying there may be more to it, because I don't think that he stonewalls them over a burger, to be honest. That's what a concern would be. If I was a Michigan fan, that's what I'd be concerned about.
Look, I agree that maybe it was more, but I'm basing it off of what's been leaked so far. Yeah. I'm not going to say there was more when it hasn't been said that there was. But so far, it was the there were other violations that they didn't care about. Right? The one violation was only on Harbaugh, and it was over the burger situation and him basically saying, "Hey, I don't want to cooperate with you guys. F off." That's what the level 1 violation is. There are other minor violations, level 2 violations that everybody pretty much commits, that they kind of just like whatever about. It's the level 1 violation that he didn't cooperate with the NCAA when they inquired about the burger situation. That's what the leak is. I'm not saying that there's more. I'm not saying that there isn't more. That
makes really good message board fodder, but I mean, you sound very articulate. I know you are. Does that really sound like does that really sound like the logical way it went down? I'm thinking there may be a little bit more of this. I'm not saying I think they may be accused of a little bit more than this. And he's kind of saying, hey, whoa, I don't have to, I'm not answering your questions, whatever, at this point. I'm not saying they're not going to cooperate at some point. I think it's the initial situation. I think they've been accused or questioned of certain things. I just don't see the purpose in fighting a $3 burger. That just sounds like a message board story to me, to be honest with you. So
Well,
that's my 2 cents.
I would agree if it wasn't the NCAA. If it was any other organization, I would agree because they have a terrible track record at this point. There's been, I mean, LSU, didn't they just have like some crazy, like, I'm not going to say the word, but some sort of crazy party during the SEC championship? You got the Bill Self situation. You got,
you're talking to a USC fan. You don't have to sell me on the NCAA being a joke to me. Seriously.
Well, yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Money was against the rules. But the fact that they took USC down for it because they didn't want to cooperate is what they said. You know, the final investigation. So you know what they got USC on? They didn't prove anything. You know what they said? They said USC, it was a high profile player. Therefore, high profile carriers need high profile compliance. And USC had a small compliance department. And they said USC should have known. Therefore, we're hitting you with institutional control. Literally, that's the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't worry, more's going to come out soon. More's going to come out soon when it all gets shaken out. Reggie Bush was ineligible. Reggie Bush's family was getting money. Regardless of what we want to say about marketing and NIL now, it was illegal what Reggie Bush's family was doing. I will say that right now.
Yeah.
However, it was not a booster. It was not to get USC to come. It was not to get Bush to come to USC. He wasn't given, no church was given $300,000 for Reggie Bush to come to USC. It was allegedly in his sophomore year. And his family started getting money for things, airplane flights, rent for a house, and a couple other things. All of that's out there. But what they want to do is make it about USC and take USC down. And that's what they did. So you don't have to argue the NCAA and their bullshit with me. Because I believe me. I know.
But that's why when you say, like, I wouldn't buy that, it could be more. I would agree with that, and that's how I would take it, and that's how I would assess it if it was any other organization but the NCAA. If it was any other, go ahead.
The good news is they're a toothless tiger. They're a clawless tiger. They're to go like meow at this point. Even if you guys did something, I don't think it's egregious. You know, I don't think it's something crazy. So I don't think they have a lot to go on. I wouldn't lose any sleep, just put it that way. Even if you guys did do something, which I'm not saying you did, we've seen it. Like you said, you brought up Bill Self. You know, you brought up who's the Wildcat? Arizona. God, I hate that guy. Sean the Arizona Wildcat basketball coach.
Yeah.
Sean, whatever his face. I mean, they've done nothing in these cases that have been absolutely absurd. So don't worry. And at the end of the day, whatever was done or whatever wasn't done or whatever the allegation is, it's not going to come of anything. Sean Miller, thank you, Michael. So it's a joke.
Another thing is, man, I hate to tell you this, man, but no one right now, I don't think anyone's scared of USC, man.
No one's scared of USC? Really?
I mean, they just lost at Tulane. I don't think anybody's.
Did you watch the end of that game? That's not going to happen in most. That's not going to happen in most games.
I know, but when we're talking about, I don't think you can be scared of a team that lost to Tulane. That's all I'm saying.
I wouldn't be scared of USC in this first year. I might not even be scared of USC in the second year. But you will be afraid of USC in 3 years, 2 years.
Maybe. I'm saying right now, though. I don't think you could be scared of USC right now. I don't think there's any.
I just listed off USC's offense just got better. USC had the best offense in the country. It just got better. It just got better. Biggest thing is we got a couple of tackles. We're starting to get linemen now.
Yeah, I guess it depends on what category of teams we're talking about. If we're talking about like Michigan and Ohio State and those teams, they're not scared of USC. I mean, why would they be?
No offense, but I watched Ohio State and Michigan's defenses. I was scared of those defenses earlier in the year. After watching them in the playoffs when they actually played a solid offense, they kind of were exposed. You know, I mean, do you disagree?
I think Ohio State, you can say that about Ohio State because they've done it for more than one game. Michigan, no. Michigan, yeah, that they allowed
TCU really. How many yards did TCU get against you guys?
No, TCU. No, don't get me wrong. TCU had a good game. They put up 30-some points on offense.
Who do you think has better offense, TCU or USC?
Ohio State has better than both, and Michigan.
No. Iowa State can't play itself, right?
No, Michigan, but
Michigan
they
play itself.
But they played Michigan.
Oh, okay. Well, my point to you is if you're not if you're not afraid of USC's offense, I wouldn't be afraid of USC's defense. Heck, I think I could pick up 8 yards on a run right now. I wish I could pick up 8 yards against USC's defense the way they tackle, but that's not the same. I'm not sure you follow, but they just picked up, a really good. Our problem is at linebacker, not really even at defensive line. It's a bit at linebacker, and they just got Mason Cobb off of the transfer portal. He's Oklahoma State. He had like 96 tackles. He's a really good linebacker. And they also picked up probably one of, if not the best, one of the best linebackers in the country in Tackett Curtis. So don't think what the problem with some people are thinking about USC's defense. You guys are thinking that USC's defense is gonna be like this forever. Oh well, Lincoln Riley doesn't care about off defense. Have you ever met a head coach who didn't care about off the defense? I don't even know where to begin with that. When people say I can't begin, I don't even argue with them. When a college football fan says, well, you know what? Lincoln Riley doesn't care about defense. Really? So basically say he doesn't care about winning because you need a defense to win. If you watch USC's defense last year, was absolutely an embarrassment. This year, it was bad. But what can you do in 1 year? How much can you turn around roster-wise in 1 year? So
look, I get you, but let me ask you, do you believe in trends though? Like, do you believe in that? Like, certain coaches have trends that are associated with them. Like, there's a path of their teams.
Yep.
So, like, when it comes to Lincoln Riley, fantastic coach, especially on offense. But has he ever, since Oklahoma, has he ever had a good defense?
So, first off, he's only been a coach for 6 years, right? Am I wrong on that? How long has he been coaching? He's only been a head coach. Wait, bear with me. They have trends. You are right, but he's only been a coach for 6 years. Also, I will throw this at you. I think that Lincoln Riley could not attract the talent at Oklahoma. I'm not going to say Oklahoma can't attract the talent because Oklahoma just killed it in recruiting on defense this year. I'm saying that Lincoln Riley and his staff could not recruit the kind of talent they needed to win on defense when he was at Oklahoma. He may be able to do that at USC. Would you give me that much?
Yeah, I mean, like, look, anything you can always turn it around. I'm not going to say 100% in the future he can't turn it around. I'm just saying I haven't seen him field a good defense yet. So until he does, it's one of those things. At this point, I got to see it. I got to see him field a good defense because 6 years as a head coach and you haven't put a good defense on the field. I got to see it. I just do. It's the same thing with. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say that he inherited Mike Stoops as the defensive coordinator, and that defense was trash. It was like next world horrible. That Georgia game that they lost literally was 100% on their defense. Their defense makes one stop here or there, and maybe Lincoln Riley's never coming to USC. He's won a national championship at Oklahoma. Like, that's literally how close they were.
Well, no, they weren't going to beat Alabama. But to your point, go ahead.
They might. You never know.
Yeah.
Well, here's what I'll say about that. I get the coordinator perspective, right? But there's also something to be said what the head coach does from the top down. For example, Jim Harbaugh, I'm not saying he's in this category at all. I'm saying you can look at like Jim Harbaugh, Kirby Smart, and Nick Saban. No matter who the coordinator is, they have a good defense, right? So there's something to be said about how you operate, whether it's practices or whatever they're doing. Coaches like, for example, Ryan Day and Lincoln Riley, for whatever reason, their defenses don't live up to whatever the talent is on the field. I don't know what it is, right? Because even Ryan Day, after that 2019 season, his defenses, for whatever reason, have not lived up to what they should be doing. And the same thing with Lincoln Riley. So I'm saying, like, I think it's a head coach thing.
Well, Mark wasn't good, but I'm sure. But let me address that really quickly. You just named 2 offensive coaches, and then on the defense side, you named defensive coaches. What is Kirby Smart known for?
Jim Harbaugh's not.
He's known for defense. Well, let me be honest with you. You guys put up great numbers defensively, but when it came into stopping somebody, you didn't do it. I mean, I have questions. I get this all the time from my Big Ten friends. Who are the juggernauts on offense in your conference? I mean, Ohio State. I'll wait.
Yeah.
And then I'll wait. See, the thing is, in the Pac-12, we had 5 of the top 12. We had 5 of the top 18 offenses in the country.
But that's the catch-22, and we've talked
about
is
it the defense or is it the offense? I get you.
Yeah, and I think both are relevant because, we could take a team like Illinois that had the #1 ranked defense in the country. Are they the best defense in the country? No, but they did play Mississippi State, who is a prolific offense in a bowl game, and they shut them down to nothing.
What about Penn State versus Utah?
So the one thing I will say, Brian, I'll get out of the way because you guys are having a better discussion without me than with me. But Brian, the one thing I will say about US or Michigan and Ohio State being afraid of USC, and that might be a little bit strong, but should certainly be concerned about them, is because it's USC, and look at where they're located, and look at where players, meaning the talent, the high school talent, is located in Southern California compared to the states of Ohio and Michigan.
I'll give you that. I think
they should be concerned about.
I think concerned and scared are two different things. Like, you could be concerned about like what USC brings to the Big Ten and what they could take away, but scared means you're like shaking in your britches that
Ohio State and Michigan have to go elsewhere to be elite programs, and Ohio State's been able to do that, and Michigan now is able to do that, but USC doesn't have to go anywhere.
Yeah, no, I agree with that.
For the most
I'm
part.
not. Yeah, I'm just saying Michigan and Ohio State shouldn't be scared from a football standpoint, is what I'm saying. Recruiting, yeah, maybe you could say that.
Well, that's where it all begins. Talent acquisition.
And again, you're saying that we have a trash defense. You're right. And let's say that Grinch is trash. You're probably right. That's just one hire away. You can't deny our head coach is probably the best or one of the best offensive minds, not in college football, just in football in general. That's really not even debatable. Right.
Well, so I'm not debating that. I'm
already figured out. If USC had a top 50 defensive top 50 defensive coordinator, it we could play with almost anybody in the country.
Yeah, but that's the question I'm having. Is it a coordinating thing at this point? Because there is a thing, and there's teams you can look. It comes more. You could swap out a coordinator. Whatever reason, the defense never ever. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you. I think the gist of you. You're breaking up. So I think you're saying it's just not about the coordinator. Well, no, I think it has to do with the players. Number one, the personnel. Number one, and then Grinch's offense. Does it work with the players he has, and can he adapt his whatever he's got going on for the roster he has? And the answer this year has been absolutely not. But you are still just a one coordinator away, or one or two really good recruiting classes away, and some transfer portal from being a viable USC's. I mean, Mark, you might agree. USC does not need to have a top 10 defense to win a national championship. They just need maybe a top 20, top 25 defense with the offense that they have.
Because their offense is very similar to Ohio State's right now. And what did we see against Georgia? Ohio State's defense gave up like 650 yards. If they would have just been semi-competent in that game, Ohio State would probably be winning a national championship. Yeah. Now, they played better than that during the season, but then again, it goes into the whole look at the offenses they faced. And when they faced a Maryland, when they faced a Penn State, when they faced a Michigan.
Well, that's what I was saying about
even
Michigan.
Just capable offenses, they caved in.
With Michigan, they played. I'm not going to downplay the talent. I mean, I think they have some ballers, but on offense. But really, it's just a Sonny Dykes offensive scheme, offense, and him running his scheme that really helped them. They got out coached, right? Because they didn't get out. They had the better players. Michigan got out coached in that game, and what I'm saying is if you and I think Sonny Dykes is good, but he had trouble at Cal. He didn't exactly light the world on fire when he was at Cal. But he is a great coach, and so when you come up against a good offensive mind like Ryan Day, like a Sonny Dykes, that's where you run into trouble. That's the only point I'm trying to make.
Got our guy Yakov. Let's see what he's got for us. Yakov, we appreciate you being here at the Voice of College Football, sir.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Oh, shoot. 2 to 3 bucknuts.
I actually was not even calling in to speak about Ohio State. I was going to give a little more attention to the two teams that are remaining, the last two teams standing.
Okay.
Well, first of all, Mark, I said this in chat. Well, both of you should say it. I said this in chat. I know that I'm going to mix sports here, but for some reason, this this TCU team reminds me of the 1985 Villanova Wildcats. I said that in the chat. I got a couple people to respond about that, but it's just a feeling I have that going against a team that's clearly more talented. Although really, that I'm not here talking about college basketball. This is
unfortunately for them, and this being the sport that it is, Yakov, you cannot puncture the basketball and squeeze the game down to, especially in that era when there's no shot clock,
right?
And
the closest thing would be to be able to.
What they Giants shoot, like 78% in that game, I think was the number. Yes, folks out there, believe it or not, I do know some college basketball.
Right.
Yeah, I believe they shot 78% in that game. That's unthinkable.
Yeah, you did remember. I remember my parents let me stay up late. I was in 6th grade. Got to watch that game, but this is not a college basketball show. I just thought I'd throw that little point there. But Mark, we were just talking about talent. Well, I keep saying Mark. I know I'm speaking to both of you here, but you were mentioning you thought maybe you don't know if this is sustainable for TCU to continue in this, especially when it's only 4 teams. But of course, that's only one more year when it's 12. But we were just talking about talent acquisition when the other previous caller was trying to compare Ohio State and Michigan to USC. But TCU, gentlemen, you might argue that if they have the right situation going, that they have a better local recruiting base than any team in the Big Ten, except for the 2 that are about to join in the next couple of years. If they do the proper things, there's far more talent in Dallas-Fort Worth area than there is in Ohio State, and Ohio, and Michigan, and Pennsylvania, and Indiana, and Illinois combined. That's just in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, let alone the entire state. So I think they might be in a situation where they could legitimately be a top 12 team, which is what you need to be after next season.
Well, that's what I pointed out too. I believe it was the first caller who said,
I only joined about 20 minutes ago. I'm sorry.
Well, no, that's fine. I just basically, I was pointing out that we will only have to sit back and watch this play out. But after this national championship run or to a national championship game, see how this impacts the TCU program. Now, Melissa Treebwasser, who we've had on several times from Frogs Today,
she's excellent.
She, of course, is pro TCU, so we got to take that with a grain of salt.
Right.
But she certainly points out a lot of things going on within the athletic department, a lot of the funding, the resourcing, the NIL collectives, the building of new facilities, all those things that have only been ramped up with more exuberance. And anytime you make a championship run, there is nothing better for enrollment than having a successful football team. That the TCU we see 2 years from now may not be the same TCU that we know of today. They might be able to take advantage of where they're located because you're right. The recruiting footprint is phenomenal.
Right. I will say this, guys. I don't know if either one of you have ever been there, but I was just going on Google Images. I was just looking at some pictures of the TCU, not just the stadium, but the campus and the surrounding area. It's actually a very beautiful campus. If I were a 17-year-old kid, 17-year-old kid, and I was football, let alone not football, but if I was going to go to college, especially if I was from Texas, that's a darn good place to enroll. They have a lot going for them. I didn't know much about TCU, but now that I'm looking at it, there's a lot of good things about the frog, about the frogged horns.
Well, it's just not the Dallas-Fort Worth area. You got all that east part of Texas, even into the western part of Louisiana, Oklahoma. Trust me, if TCU is winning, you have Texas and Oklahoma, and who knows what their entry into the SEC will do with their recruiting. But there's gonna be a void there in the Big 12, and if they can fill and be the top dog in the Big 12, with those 2 leaving, that's also going to improve their recruiting going forward.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess the last thing I'll say is, since we have someone on USC here, and then I'll let you gentlemen go. Actually, something my father and I were talking about, but now I'm talking to someone from USC here. Do you think Pete Carroll was, again, we're talking about talent acquisition. Do you think Pete Carroll was an outstanding, innovator or great football mind when he was at USC, or and I'm sure he was certainly competent, or was really the main thing is he just was able to get a whole bunch of first-round picks from California and enroll in USC, which is part of football. That's important too. And And if you guys can do that again, then you're gonna be better than any team in the Big Ten. But anyway, that's, I guess, a two-part question there.
Well, it was more of an evaluator. Mike Williams from Florida, Cushing from New Jersey, Dwayne Jarrett, New Jersey, guys from all over the place. I'm forgetting a ton. Michigan, Ohio. Davis from Ohio. He got guys from everywhere. What he was first and foremost is he was a lights out recruiter. Yeah, if you wanted someone to close, you put Pete Carroll in the room and he'd close. But the biggest thing was his not just him, also his staff, his original staff. Those guys could go out and evaluate talent, and then once they had their evaluated guys, they would go and get them. And it was a team also coaching. I don't know if he was an innovator, but his defenses in the second half, you better get your points in the first half. Because one thing I remembered about USC was it's that in the third quarter, you weren't going to score. You better have got your scoring in. You're not coming back in the second half. If you're there, if you got a lead, you're okay. The only team that I saw that broke that rule was that Texas team with which was again with a generational talent.
Right.
But other than that, you had another game against 2 games with Cal. There's a guy named Aaron Rodgers on their side. So other than those examples I can think of, there wasn't a lot of back and forth. Even the 2005 Notre Dame game, that was brought back together by Notre Dame on a punt return. So I mean, usually it was the first half. If you didn't get to USC in the first half, you weren't going to get to USC. So was he revolutionary in what he did? I didn't remember anyone saying that. I didn't know something revolutionary, but he had solid staffs, and they made those halftime adjustments. They would crush teams in the second half.
Okay, I don't remember all those things, but that sounds I just haven't thought about that. But
I'm going to bring up something real quick, just based on perception of just the body language on the sideline and everything I remember about witnessing USC at that point and how much it contrasted everything else we saw in college football from that point and before, was the head coach being the stern head coach and the players are down here and they're subservient to the head coach. Certainly Pete Carroll was in charge, but his interaction with players, like, that was completely revolutionary and new and fresh to the game. Him like grabbing guys and hugging them and laughing and you didn't see coaches act like that on the sideline in football games.
Maybe he was the first at least college players coach. Is that where that term started?
And Mark, you know what? That's what they said about Pete Carroll in the pros. They said, "Oh, he's too much of a players coach. It's not going to work." Because he was like that. He was like that with his players at the NFL. Oh, it's not going to work. Well, he went back and proved them wrong because it did work. Because that's actually now how the coaches are now, and that's because it really is it's a player-driven league now. It's not the coach telling the players; it's the other way around. And he went there, and he was a weird play from having two Super Bowls. So,
yep.
Right. Mark, a programming suggestion. I know you're going to start having a weekly show with Steve Dace.
Yes,
he already did. Already started.
I saw. I was able to watch that, but only the last 2 minutes. But I went back and watched it. But do you think that'll be a call-in show? You guys, you expected that to have that, or just going to be a write-in show? I guess
that is not the plan right now.
Okay. I'd give a big super chat if I ever had the opportunity to get to speak to Steve.
All right, we will keep that in mind, sir.
Okay, gentlemen, have a great night, and I'm looking forward to Monday night.
We appreciate that, Yakov.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Have a good one. We also want to remind everyone that we've got our Discord, of course. You go to Patreon and search Mark Rogers TV. Sign up right there. You can talk to these knuckleheads all the time, 24/7, 365. Our guy, David Greenshield's stopping by. David, we can't hear you. Whatever that dreaded switch you need to hit. And he's searching, and he's searching, and he thinks he has it. There you are.
Got it. Sorry.
I've been there, David. I've been there.
Mute button. Hey, give me 5 minutes with Dace. Can I get 5 minutes with Dace? 5 minutes. That's all I want. No,
I can hardly get 5 minutes with him.
Yeah, I tell you what, he does love the sound of his own voice from time to time, doesn't he, Mark?
I actually didn't even mean it that way. I just meant to get him on here first and foremost. But yeah, once we get him on here, if you would notice, my tactic in that first show was I laid out the topic and said, I'm going to start us out, and I got everything out that I wanted to say, and then I let him loose. So that's going to be my approach.
Well, first of all, I want to say, as another Ohio State fan, I will say this: I do think, Tim, from your perspective, that USC is absolutely trending in the right direction. I think I've already said that to you before, but I mean, I think what you're starting to see is, and I don't think that there's a pattern with Riley teams, and I'm not saying he can't build a really good defense there. And I put this in the chat, but what is your confidence? And maybe you've already stated this, but bottom line in Grinch.
I don't have confidence in Grinch after what. So what kind of made someone made a point. It was almost like it was right in front of my face, and I was just really seeing what I wanted to see. I'm not saying he can't be. I'm saying at this point, it appears to me you can't. The USC fans, what we've been saying is, oh, he just needs his right pieces. He just needs the right pieces. He just needs the right pieces. The problem is that, do we think that Tulane had better pieces? You know, it's like, do you think the talent? And I will tell you this: I think the talent. I'm not downplaying the talent. We're talking about TCU with team speed and athletes. You know, that kid Watts, that receiver, that guy could play on a number of teams, man. And then how I already forgotten the running back's name.
Spears.
I think I'm thinking in shock. I mean, that kid. I mean, he could play on almost any team in the country. You know, so by saying they didn't have any talent, no. But do they have talent wise? I mean, how many top recruiting classes have they had? So I'm a bit concerned that he wasn't able to put together a more effective defense than we saw in that Cotton Bowl, right? I mean, I think that's an indictment. You can't really argue is you had time to prepare. Your team is as healthy as it's been all year. Yeah, there were some dinged up players on defense, but they all got healthy for that game. And that was the product. Now, it's been these if you look, they've been these games where USC falls apart. I mean, it gets a bad Cal team and a bad Cal defense. Right. There's an onside kick, a couple long throws, and boom, they're right back in the game when USC was up 21 points. It's these collapses that I've seen from him that they're a bit concerning, to say the least. But you know, at the same time, also, whatever happened in that game, it was just a mess. It was a collapse. And I think the collapse has to come to the coaching at some level. You know, you got to put your players in a position to close out games. And I think that is coaching.
Well, I mean, the bottom line is this. I mean, you know, well, first of all, I just want to say we had Grinch here, obviously, at Ohio State. And that was in 2018. That was, you know, one of our bad defenses, by the way. That was the last year of the Urban Meyer era, of course. And we barely got through that season. And the only reason that we had the success we had that year is we had maybe the greatest season an Ohio State quarterback ever has, with Haskins' 50 touchdown passes that year, the late Dwayne Haskins, where, I mean, Mark remembers it. I mean, they had to gut out a lot of close wins that year, and we needed every single one of those 50 touchdowns to have the type of season that we had. Now, I do think that the 18 defense was more of a, I put more of it on Schiano than I do Grinch, to be perfectly honest with you. And I think Mark could probably recall there was a lot of Ohio State fan base that was really anti-Schiano at that point rather than Grinch, wouldn't you say, Mark?
Well, I would say the thing about Schiano was that we learned was that his scheme was he was very rigid and unbending in that it had to be this NFL complexity level defense, and he didn't back off of that and let the players play and simplify the defense and let them soak it in and be able to perform with freedom out there.
Was that the first year of that defense? Were they installing a new defense, right? They brought, correct or incorrect?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they had Schiano for a few years. Here's the thing. I mean, their 17 defense, I mean, wasn't that bad. I mean, I that year, well, I say a few things. Number one, and obviously we can't make injuries. And I was just on with Uncle Lou. You can never make injuries as an excuse, of course, even if it's like an all-time player that you lose, of course. But anyway, losing Nick Bosa that year was a big deal. I want to say that. Because I would have loved to have seen Nick Bosa play with Chase Young. That would have been fun to have watched. But the back seven of that defense wasn't very good. Their linebacker play that year was not really good. Now, I think a lot of that was on the coaching, though, because they had a lot of players playing out of position, and we could not stop the run that year. Remember that game where Maryland ran up and down the field with us with McFarland's son had a huge game against us, and we barely survived the late 2-point conversion. So, yeah, and to be fair, I would not have used Grinch as the fall guy for that defense. I think, some of it was Shiano and some of it was our other position coaches. We had a terrible linebacker coach in Bill Davis who only got the job because he was the best man in Urban Meyer's wedding. I still believe that to this day. Talk about, buddy getting a job. But yeah, I think that there were some, to your point, Tim, I think there were some bad staff moves that year. And I was actually more against Shiano than I was against Grinch, is the long and short of what I'm saying.
Well, I think that that of all years, there've been enough criticism and reasons to criticize Grinch. I don't think a guy coming in 1 year with this, you lost your head coach. I mean, there's a lot going into the season. There's a lot of turmoil around that team. And you just say you lost Bosa. There was a lot going on there. So I don't think you can really evaluate his role that year. I don't think too strongly, but there are strong reasons for indictments when he was at Oklahoma, because again, the same thing I talked about USC applies over to Oklahoma. Sure, they probably didn't have the best talent on defense, but you got to think they had better talent than most of the teams in the Big 12. So at some point you have to realize, is it working? And he did have a couple of years. The defense for him this year is the fact that this is his first year. And and I will tell everybody out there in chat land and both you guys that there was a lot to turn around culture wise. It was a mess. It was an absolute mess. I'm just saying he had the whole year. I didn't see it trending in a good direction. And there is kind of an indictment on the fact that he just could not stop that defense at all.
Well,
even
the
with the
point that you make about the trajectory of the season, that's the worst part of it, because you should be improving as the season goes on, of course, and they play their best defense early in the season. And then the other thing is that, as you know, Tim, they had historically maybe the worst defense in USC history the year before. And although they didn't come anywhere close to supplementing the defense like they did the offense, they had some key transfer portal additions to kind of patchwork the defense that you would have expected, like quality players that you would have expected them to be reasonably better. And they were just as bad statistically this year as the year before, if not worse. They're 124th in yards per play.
Yeah, the score per game got better. There was a huge hole, and I can thank Larry Pilgrim and the Utes for showing the entire country that the middle of USC defense, not that any offensive coordinator was going to find this out anyway, was just a sieve. The linebacking play was just absolutely terrible, and they showed that middle of the field, especially with a tight end. What was it? Kincaid had like 85 catches for 4,000 yards in that game. I can't remember. But it just showed there's a hole there.
234 comes to mind. Yeah,
something like that.
A zillion.
And the fact is we played the best teams towards the end of the year as well, though. So you got to also keep that in mind. So there's this thing where I'm not making a defense for him. I think unfortunately, we're not going to get. I mean, I'll tell you what. I said that you guys would be scared of us. If USC got Jim Leonard, you guys should better be scared of us. If that happened, I don't see it happening. I think he's going to the NFL. But I mean, if USC landed Jim Leonard, his ability to recruit and you can't downplay the fact, knowing high schools and recruiting, if we can get defensive linemen and linebackers from the Midwest with his touches and his defense with Riley's offense, I think that'd be pretty formidable in any conference, any division.
Well, I was going to say the one thing about these bowl games too, Tim, if you have 30 days to prep for some of these bowl games, and you're running up against really good offenses, I was going to ask this question. I didn't get a chance. I was on Uncle Lou the other day. We faced Georgia. Mark, I mean, just bottom line, is your feeling that this Georgia team is anywhere close to where they were a year ago? Do you think? Because I think they may be better offensively, but not as good defensively.
Yeah, I think, well, basically offensively, it's so close that it's negligible. They might be a little bit better. Maybe Stetson Bennett is
that's
a
where I was
better
gonna go.
caretaker of the ball, possibly. But besides that, certainly Arian Smith, who tore up the Buckeyes, is more of a factor this season than what they had. But they had George Pickens last year, so it's more defense. Yeah, that defense last year was historically good versus this defense. I still think it's the best defense in the country, I think, but it's debatable.
But what we said, Mark, if you find the right quarterback and the right group of receivers, you can exploit any defense. You know what I mean? This goes back to the Saban years. What happened when Saban ran? And this kind of gives credence to what Tim was saying about, maybe the level of quarterback play and skill players in your conference. I mean, if you run up against, the right quarterback, I mean, all those years, who was beating Saban defenses?
Yeah.
It was
Cam
usually the
Newton,
hot,
Johnny Manziel. Yeah.
right, right, right. It was that hot quarterback that they would run into that, maybe the team didn't have the all-around talent, but, they ran into that hot quarterback with a group of receivers that just was able to exploit that defense. And, I do think that you get into these playoff games, a lot of them do become like this, high-scoring games where, maybe if you can get a red zone stop or a turnover or two, in a lot of instances, that's what you're kind of hoping for.
Yeah. The skill level of the throwers and catchers across the board in college football is so much higher than it was 10 or 15 years ago by many more teams.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why I said, if you think about it, Georgia was last year winning it with a defensive-oriented team was kind of an outlier after the previous 3 national champions.
Yeah.
With 18 Clemson, 19 LSU, and 20 Alabama were all offensive-oriented teams.
Yeah. So anybody's defensive approach kind of falls into 2 categories. One, either we're coming after you. We think we've got the kind of athletes. We can come after you, and we'll get burned during the course of a game, but we'll also create havoc plays. Or we're just going to sit back and we'll tackle in space and we'll wait for you to make a mistake, get behind the sticks, or do something that's going to bog down your offense, and we'll take advantage just by stopping you because you've stopped yourself via penalty or something that's going to happen during the course of a 75-yard drive.
Right. Try and make teams take the long route as best as you can, and a penalty, a sack, or right.
Quarterback's going to throw the ball in. Yeah, exactly.
Right. Hey, Tim, I watched your game, by the way, against Tulane. I think that special teams cost you the end of that game as much as your defense did.
Yeah.
You can't account for a guy dropping the ball at the 2-yard line. Yeah. It literally would have been better if he would have fumbled it and then they would have picked it up and ran in for a touchdown. Because that was literally the only way they could, really win that game.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The safety is the one play that, even though it's the least amount of points, you have to give the ball back. It's the only time that you can score that you then also get the ball as well. So you've created 2 possessions basically in terms of scoring.
Well, and another thing is if they would have, so they moved the ball in that one. I mean, they got the ball to the 36 on a kick return, and they threw a touchdown pass on that post, whatever route the guy took, and he was just gone, and that was one play. And then they kick it off, and then they get the safety, and then they punt it out. And then I'll tell you what, fans always bitch about it, but man, if you really do, if you're a Trojan fan out there and you actually have the stomach to do it, go back and watch 3rd and 10, 4th and 10. The left tackle literally tackles Tuli Pelotu twice on those 2 plays. It was pretty painful. But again, as my buddy Chris, the UCLA fan, told me, holding happens all the time. But if you guys watch these 2 plays, our referees with the Southern accent sure as heck did not do us any favors on those 2 calls. So,
hey,
that's
Tim,
why they won. Good job, Tulane.
Tim, I can verify that all the Georgia fans have accused Ohio State of holding on every single play because they didn't get 85 sacks in that game. That's been like a predominant theory out there. Hey,
the 3rd and 10 I'm talking about, the guy literally, it wasn't his hands got outside the frame. The guy literally wrapped his arm around him and was pulling him from behind as he's trying to get the quarterback. I'm just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? But anyway.
Is he coming back?
No. And he shouldn't. I mean, he'll be a day 1 guy. I think he'd be a 2nd round draft pick. He'll be a good player.
Hey, I wanted to make one comment on recruiting and one comment on NIL, if I can, before I get out of here with you guys. I do. By the way, I don't know if this has been brought up on Buckeye Show, Mark, but and you probably heard this a fair amount. But I want to put it out there again. I think one of the major things that would help the state of Ohio in recruiting, if they ever did it, was to go to spring football 7-on-7. Has
Yeah.
noon or the Buckeye, has that been a topic before? I don't know if you guys have talked about that.
Oh, we've talked about the state of recruiting in the state of Ohio, just because more from the standpoint of
population
shift and all
yeah.
that business, but not in terms of what I did pose that question. That's a good question. A good thing that you bring up, because I did pose that question here in the last couple months in terms of we know all those other factors that are affecting uh, the level of high quality players in the state of Ohio.
Right.
But yeah, what is the state of the amount of resources and all of that that's being put into high school football today versus what's happened in past decades? Because I'm not familiar with that.
Well, that's one of
anyway.
the things they've complained about being behind the times on, in the state, is not going, because that would help develop more skill players, quarterback play, things like that, is if they went to that model. And I've talked to some high school coaches about that, and they still don't see it yet happening in the near future,
So
but
there's obviously an academic pushback there.
Well, it's also the athletes for the spring sports. It hurting the spring sports.
True.
Because the athletes also play the other sports, with the track and baseball and, other sports. But there's no doubt that it would help. The other thing too, Mark, is Indiana does it. They're a Midwestern school that does that has. So I don't see why Ohio wouldn't.
So if you're a football player who doesn't play certain positions, though, if you don't play the skill positions, then you do what during the spring?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're doing any other like baseball or shot put or anything else.
Yeah, but I'm talking about if the quarterbacks and the wide receivers and the DBs are making that commitment to football, then what are the linemen doing?
That good question. I mean, other than the only what maybe they're doing, I could see is what, wrestling, or I mean,
yeah, but if they don't participate in another sport, you're not going to hold them accountable to be just as committed to the football team.
That's a good point. That's a good point. I mean, I'd like to see the state do it, but I don't know if it's going to happen anytime soon. But I think that would be another way because along your lines of the population shift, Ohio is still the 7th most populated state in the country. It's not
exactly. It shouldn't have taken such a hit in the level of high school football that it has. You're right, because while the population shift has hit other states much more, Ohio is still gaining in population, and like you say, 7th in the nation. But the level of it's alarming. Like I've kept track of this because I'm not a big recruiting guy, but from a big picture, I think I track it pretty well. And I was shocked when I looked at the number of 4-star players in like states like Alabama versus Ohio recently.
Yeah. Well, and that's why Ohio State's basically taken only maybe about 7 or 8 guys tops in state.
Yeah.
Now, I do think that there's some 3-star, like, because they'll take a few 3-stars in a recruiting class. I mean, I think there's a couple of 3-stars they could take from in-state who they could probably develop maybe by their junior or senior year and can be players. Because we've had good luck with some Ohio 3-stars. And that's basically what Kentucky and Michigan State are taking right now. D'Antonio kind of built the 2010 to 2015 program around Ohio 3-stars. So, hey, last thing, hey, Tim, what are your thoughts on NIL in the future? Are you guys aren't going down that road, or you say, with the collectives?
Oh no, I mean, I think it's inevitable, but I'm sure it's all going to depend on, at some point there's got to be some further clarification, which I think is to be difficult because there's so many different laws on the books, right? The NIL laws are different in every state, but I think there has to be something has to come out. Right now it's kind of the wild, wild west, and I think USC is kind of sitting back, something that they're very conservative traditionally doing, and I think it's hurting. I think they have to do something, otherwise they're going to continue to lose out on top players. So there's that. By the way, guys, I just looked it up. 247. I don't think there was one 5-star Ohio player this year.
Yeah, there's a few 4-stars. I think they had about 10 to 12.
There's a lot of 4-stars.
Yeah.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 11, and they're all going to either Ohio State or Notre Dame.
Right.
Most of them going to Ohio State. But yeah,
Right.
there were 0 5-stars this year, and only one top 100 player according to 247, which is shocking. But that's sparse. That's like Oklahoma sparse.
Yeah. Well, that's why I was saying that's why they're about like 7 or 8 guys right now is about the max number they're taking. Although I think sometimes some of their evaluation could be a little bit skewed on that, but that's also debatable. But it's still a low
But I will
number,
also
Tim.
say, sorry, David, but I will also
Yeah.
say I'm seeing a lot of interior O line, D line, safety, linebacker, interior O line, D line, linebacker, safety. So
Yep.
at these key positions, you guys have a lot of studs. You know, I remember a lot of California. There's a lot of California talent, but there's a lot of when there's like 8 top quarterbacks, you can only get 1 or 2 of those guys, right? You know,
Right.
when there's like 15 top wide receivers, you only need 2 or 3 of those guys. What you have there at Ohio, or is what I wish we had a little more of here in Southern California, are those front 7, especially those interior front 7 guys.
Well, that's the old school theory, Tim. You probably heard it before. You go to the Midwest to get the big boys. You go to the South and out West to get your speed, to get your skill and your secondary and that.
Yeah. And a great line can mitigate a lot of that, a lot of the speed you might miss outside. But again, Ohio State and Notre Dame don't have to worry about that. They're getting both. So,
yeah. All right. Well, as always, it's a pleasure, gentlemen. Good talk.
Thank you, David.
Appreciate you being
take
here.
care, guys.
We will take 2 more calls here at the Voice of College Football, and we will take one from our guy, Dr. C. What's going on, man?
Hey, how are y'all doing tonight? And really enjoying the show.
The Arkansas Trojan, the Razorback Trojan.
That's there he is.
There may not be another, so
an interesting combo. Must have been some tough years for you when USC and Arkansas were playing each other.
Well, no, it's actually a lot of fun you just bash all the SEC, fanboys on Facebook. They, just seeing them get crushed. They were just the idea out there, which is kind of still is that the SEC is, just leaps and bounds above everyone else.
Well,
and
back then, not so much. Now, yeah, I think Alabama showed USC that was true. but we showed Auburn and Arkansas that back then it was different.
Absolutely. Hey, so talking about USC, last time I called into the show, the other show, I think I was a little harsh on the offensive line with Caleb Williams does hang on to the ball quite a bit longer than anyone else, maybe any other quarterback in the country, hands down. How's that going to do in the pros?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, one thing is he has a whole nother year to figure it out, but I think he'll be fine. I think he hangs on to the ball because he can. I think he hangs on to the ball in a system that, you're right. He's going to need to be able to make that quick read because there's been a lot of guys that have all the ability, but nothing between the ears. I'm not saying that's Caleb Williams, right? But those windows and the time and those defensive ends get a lot faster once you move from college to pro. Means that I think the jump from high school to college is big, is a lot bigger, but from college to pro, it's also a pretty big jump and the windows get smaller, but especially that time window to get rid of the ball. So yeah, he's going to need to learn to get those quick reads and get the ball out.
Absolutely. Because, the offensive line can kind of just hold up a defensive lineman for 3 seconds, right? 1, 2, 3, the ball's out, and what he likes to do is go back and he's running for his life and he's finding someone open and that's all game. But in the NFL, once the D lineman is past the lineman, he's going to sack you. They have that kind of speed. So I was just on a pure evaluation as a NFL prospect. I was wondering if that's going to hurt him, or do you see him going number 1 hands down? Not next year, the year after next, I guess.
Is that for Mark or for me?
I do.
For either.
Unless we see something different from his game, I see him as the overall number 1 pick. a year from now.
I don't think people give him enough credit for his arm talent as well. I think that he does what he does because he can, because of the situation. You also have to remember that when you have in the pros, he's going to have offensive linemen that are going to give him, he's going to have, hopefully, once he goes like to the Jets or something, he's going to have an offensive line that's going to take care of him, and give him time to make one or two reads. A lot of times this year, because of the patchwork offensive line we've had, he hasn't had time to go to a second and third read because he's got defensive linemen all over him within seconds. So a lot of that's is not by design. It's just what happens. But I've seen him make great reads. I mean, the way he gets the ball out, there's a lot of throws. He can make that 3/4 throw. He can go to the top. He's got a strong arm. He fit tight windows. He can take those hole shots. I mean, he can beat the safety a lot of times with those hole shots. That shows a lot of arm strength, and he puts the ball right where he needs to. So I think his arm talent is underplayed, and I think that I think Reen, he's a student of the game. He's a bright kid. I can't see why he wouldn't be able to pick up on those reads.
Yeah, and then we had the other gentleman in that show. His name, I just can't think of it right now. I'm drawing a blank. But he said that Caleb, he considered the greatest Trojan quarterback of all time. How do you – and I was just thinking about this. I was like, if Carson Palmer or Matt Leinart were the quarterback this year, do we have the exact record, or would they do better?
Because even Carson and Matt were two different quarterbacks as well. I think you're trying to compare two eras together. I think Caleb Williams is more like the modern day quarterback, right? He's a Mahomes. He's a guy that's going to move the ball, get outside, and he's going to make plays with his feet just as much as his arm, like Lamar Jackson, that kind of thing, Whereas you're talking about two pocket passers. I know that the funny thing is Carson Palmer was more mobile than people gave him credit for. He was a big. I stood next to this man. He is a massive. You would think he's an offensive lineman at first glance. He's a big man with a cannon arm, but he was also pretty mobile. I don't like that comparison because if you're talking about pure like winning and accomplishment, Matt Leinart is the most accomplished quarterback at USC. Is he the best? I'm sure that even Matt would probably say that Caleb can do things that he can't do. I'm sure he has a better arm and better legs, but we just talked about, what about pre-snap reads? What about knowing the defense? What about making the right decisions? Maybe, when to do this, when to do that. I think people over time have really downplayed how good Leinart is because you just go back to that 2005 Notre Dame game on fourth. It was fourth and 9, in the 2005 game. He literally put the ball right where it had to be. And Dwayne Jarrett had a contact knock loose, so he couldn't see the ball. So the ball wasn't right in the breadbasket, right where it had to be. That wasn't going to happen. And he audibled to that play. Kiffin said, look for this safety, but whatever the read. And pre-snap, he switched to an audible, and bam, they went to that play, and the rest is history. So I don't know. It depends on how you're evaluating your quarterbacks.
Yeah, excellent point.
Yeah, and I also think that a lot of guys take a hit if they go to the NFL, don't have it work out for them there like Leinart didn't, and then people evaluate the college career and aren't able to separate the two.
And then Castle goes on to have a 10-year career as the backup, but never had a meaningful snap at USC.
Yeah, and the pro game has changed so much. It seemed like in the past, nowadays they work with the quarterback to best fit him for the team. They work for him, and in the past, I feel like the quarterbacks was forced to. Does that make sense? Like nowadays, they really work with the quarterback to develop him into basically work around how his personal quarterbacking style is. In the past, I remember Steve Young saying about Eli Manning, he goes, I think it's really scary when they're saying, hey, let's just pick whatever plays you like, whatever you're comfortable with running. And I think they do that nowadays in the NFL compared to in the past. In the past, it was so rigid as in, hey, this is how we do things. We don't do this like you did at University of Texas,
Yeah. I don't know that Vince Lombardi really cared what plays Bart Starr really wanted to call or what suited his abilities rather than this is the offense we run. So you better be good enough to run it. And I know I'm going to prehistoric days, but even way beyond that, Chuck Noll, Terry Bradshaw, Tom Landry, Roger Staubach, on through. You mentioned Joe Montana. He was just brilliant in Bill Walsh's offense, but I don't think it had to do with Bill Walsh.
Well, like just Steve Young come in and do pretty much the same thing with a little more legs,
But it wasn't Bill Walsh saying, I'm going to adjust my offense to fit Joe Montana. Yeah.
And you mentioned Joe Montana. If you look at his tape, Patrick Mahomes, and I would never think I would compare Joe Montana and Patrick Mahomes, but Joe Montana was incredibly in the pocket. He moved incredibly. If you see some of the old highlights of Joe, he is moving around the pocket incredibly, and he just had a can of an arm. I mean, the greatest quarterback, the most talented quarterback ever, Joe Montana.
Most talented quarterback of all time.
Absolutely.
Talented?
Okay? I don't agree with that. No.
You don't think so?
No.
The greatest quarterback of all time, Joe?
That's debatable. He's definitely in the argument. And before Tom Brady did what he did, most people thought he was.
Well, I think Tom Brady is the GOAT.
Yeah, he's the most accomplished.
The most accomplished,
yes.
And the GOAT.
I think there's a difference there. Like, I believe Aaron Rodgers can play the position better than Tom Brady, but he hasn't accomplished anything close to what Tom Brady has.
And that's funny to me because, Aaron Rodgers will never, ever get close to Tom Brady's accomplishments. And when I watch him play, I think Tom's better, but I can't tell you. I've heard so many athletes and experts tell me that Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Tom Brady.
Well,
and I don't see it, but I have to believe it.
Don't watch the Aaron Rodgers of today at whatever he is, 38 years old, even though he can still move. But man, you take it back 5 to 10 years, the way he can move and throw lasers on the run. Yeah, Tom Brady does not have his mobility, number one, nor his arm talent. Check out, we could name a zillion different plays out of Aaron Rodgers, but he won a playoff game in Dallas by getting basically trapped against the sideline and throwing the ball like almost from his hip like that, spinning it like 35 or 40 yards and putting the ball exactly where it needed to be on the sideline to save a game. Like, yeah.
It's funny. I used to work with Aaron Rodgers' old girlfriend, and she used to talk about how great her boyfriend was at playing football. And I was like, he plays at junior college, a Butte County junior college. He can't be that good.
Well, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, whoever missed out on Aaron Rodgers, a lot, in that time, I think the players that did not get a D1 offer where they wanted to go would go junior college rather than D2. Or, because they could transfer then, kill it in junior college and then transfer to where they wanted to go.
I do love your argument on Joe Montana. Keep up the good fight. Don't let go of that.
And
it's debatable. But in terms of being the most talented, I don't know that many people would jump on board with you on that.
I went back and looked at some more tape of Joe Montana, and I was like, holy heck, this guy, Patrick Mahomes. I mean, the guy, I couldn't believe it because I grew up in the Bay Area. I grew up with a Niners fan, and I just remember Joe being a pocket quarterback. But no, he was incredibly mobile in the pocket. He had incredible mechanics. I mean, the guy was, go back and look at some of his highlights. Just a phenomenal Patrick Mahomes of back in the day. I could not believe it.
Did you watch any Broncos games by any chance back then?
With John Elway?
Guy named the John Elway guy was pretty talented too.
Yeah, but Joe beat him in Super Bowl.
Just being able to
teams beat each
throw
other.
the ball. Wide receivers used to, tell stories about how they had an X on their chest after so many days in training camp because the ball came at them so hard from John Elway that it would implant the X from the football on their chest.
Oh yeah, I believe it. Just some horror stories of trying to catch a ball. Imagine trying to catch a football from him like barehanded.
Well, that's why we talk about we've had the talk now. We've bounced around between most accomplished, the most talented. Too bad we can't make a Frankenstein quarterback, because I mean we could piece these guys together, because the things that Tom Brady does, like again, just his poise, his pre-read snaps. I mean, he's an offensive coordinator out there, right? I think he's seeing stuff ahead of the game. He's so far ahead of the game in real time, before it even happens, that allows him to be the elite quarterback and win like he has. And I mean, all the quarterbacks we named, from Montana to Elway to Captain Comeback. I mean, it's like these guys. It doesn't happen by chance, and it's just this game. Different eras, different systems, different things required of them. Good teams, bad teams, everything. It's so hard to say who was the best. But I like what you said about Aaron Rodgers. When he was at the top of his game, I haven't seen many quarterbacks that could play like him.
I remember seeing analysts, if you get a decent analyst in the booth to do the game and you can catch on to some of the things they're talking about. I remember Chris Collinsworth, another analyst, basically pointing out that Aaron Rodgers at times would almost toy with the defense. He would almost bypass the easier throw just to laser a shot in between two defenders that was a much more difficult throw. And I will say this, what comes to mind that might be the most impressive passing display I've ever seen in my life, that I'm guessing that hardly anyone, if anyone, has seen in the chat, was actually from a 75-year-old Roger Staubach, something in that range. Like, I don't know what I was watching, some documentary or some Cowboys, look back or something, but they were playing a flag football game, Cowboys alumni, and they're on the NFL field at Jerry's World, and Roger Staubach's 75, 78 years old. I couldn't believe how he could still throw a football. It was unbelievable. He's still spinning out routes, the rotation and the spin on the ball's perfect. I couldn't believe it.
Wow. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Tim and I remember that game with USC. Rodgers, I think, went 27 for 28 in the second half.
Hey guys, we're falling way behind on our super chats. There's a bunch.
Yes, we are.
Oh yeah, okay.
Well, just pause a second so we can hit them. I can't type them in fast enough.
So we got our Michigan man, Jason. Thank you so much for the contribution. Michigan getting too good. The NCAA trying to find some dirt. Thank you, man, Jason. We appreciate you being here. And we got Shoelace Sooner. When you guys were talking about quarterbacks holding onto the football too long, Shoelace says Dylan Gabriel gets the crown for holding the ball the longest. At least CW, Caleb Williams, can escape from the pocket and not take a sack.
Oh, wow, burn.
Let's see. Let's get to the next one. If I can find it here. We got Michigan man Jason coming back. We appreciate that, Jason. Thank you so much. I hope you're still here to Mark, love your channel. Keep up the great work. Thank you for that, Jason. Appreciate that. Brian's here as well. Anyone that doesn't put Tom is crazy. Tom Brady, GOAT. Got it.
Yeah, Tom is the GOAT. Hey.
Again, depending on your criteria, but the easiest one to defend is Super Bowls, passing yardage, NFL playoff wins. Those, when you go to the statistics, then the only thing that rubs me the wrong way about all of that is that you get a team record attached to quarterbacks. You don't get a team record attached to anybody else. I wouldn't mind seeing the team record for, Derrick Henry in the NFL. Why doesn't his team record show up? This is his record as he played, We see that for the quarterbacks. Why don't we see that for anybody else? We can make our own assessment as to how valid that statistic is. But show us what the team record is for every player.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think one of the things that separates Tom from everyone else is those when those 2-minute comebacks. When you've got the game on the line, who do you want as your quarterback, right?
Well, see, I was thinking that, and I was thinking Aaron Rodgers. I was thinking Joe Montana. I was thinking, oh my gosh, it's like that.
John Elway.
John Elway.
You can put Brett Favre in there.
There's a lot of guys that have done that. And what I'm saying, when I think of it, though, it just seems like which one of those guys though you're like, oh, we're gonna win, and it just seems like Brady be the top of my list of if I have 2 minutes and I need to go down the field, who do I want? I'm gonna say Tom Brady, because maybe not all the physical tools, but again, those mental tools, reading the just being ready pre-snap, knowing where he's going with the ball, etc. I don't think there's anyone done better than he has with that part of it.
Favre is one of the more fun quarterbacks of all time to watch and extremely gifted. You talk about arm talent, but he made his slew of mistakes in key moments. The 2009 NFC Championship game, Minnesota, New Orleans, they're in field goal range to go to the Super Bowl, and he is inexplicably throwing the ball across his body in the middle of the field. Game over, interception, you go home. And that's only 2 years after he throws a pick in overtime on a horrible read in the 2007 NFC Championship game against the Giants at Lambeau Field. And that only came like 3 years after he blew a game in Philadelphia in the playoffs. Where he just like blindly threw a ball off his back foot and lost them the game. So Brett Favre was fun to watch, but I wouldn't necessarily, if I had a choice between legendary quarterbacks, I'm not talking about like what I would want Brett Favre to quarterback my team. Absolutely. But if I had the choice between the very best of all time, he'd be down a ways because he would make some foolish decisions.
Yeah, he was fun to watch. Absolutely phenomenal. All right. Well, I'll let you guys go because I know you got more callers, but thank you so much for taking my call.
Of course, DC.
All right. Have a good night.
You too. Yeah, Brian makes the point here. Tom Brady leads every category, the most comebacks. I'd like to see that one. I'd like to look that one up, but that makes total sense.
I wouldn't doubt that one.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it in any way. I just haven't seen that list, and I don't know what justifies a comeback. I maybe a fourth quarter comeback, I guess. The most wins we know and the most Super Bowls than any franchise. All right.
My favorite part about Tom Brady is the way he was done in the Patriots and went down there and won a Super Bowl. That to me, I like that a lot. Just the way that went down. Even though my interest in NFL has kind of gone down the last 5 or 6 years, hearing that news made me smile. So I did.
That he left the Patriots and still was.
Yeah, and then goes, I'll go win one over there. I'm not that important. You want to start flirting with other quarterbacks? Oh, cool. I'll go down there and win a Super Bowl.
Yeah, it is.
You think my time's passed? Okay, I'll go down and win one over there.
Now we could go through a complete history, and he has been very fortunate. But you brought up the Pete Carroll decision at the goal line. There's just one example, but there are a ton of other ones as well. So he's been pretty, he played a great game and put them in position, and the defense almost gave it up, but he's got one less Super Bowl ring just right there if they just give the ball to Marshawn Lynch.
Or if the ball's not thrown behind him and it's actually to him, that it would have been, it was a poor throw. I mean, you don't make that throw. I think it's the right call. It's just you need to rely on your quarterback to make the right. They knew they had time for a couple of plays, so why not go for it? I mean, again, it could be argued left, right, and center, but I think it was just a poor read by Russell Wilson. Either throw it away or throw it where the guy can't get to it. But anyway,
true.
We never know, right? You get stopped on 2 downs and say, "Why didn't we throw it?"
I would have slammed it ahead, though. For sure,
I would have too.
Larry, appreciate you being here. You know that, fellas. Don't ever let Dan Marino go by the wayside. He had been in my head during some of that conversation. Yes.
With Duper, and who was the other receiver? Duper and
Mark Clayton.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Do we have any other super chats? I think that's where we are.
I was typing away while you guys were talking.
Yes,
by the way, and Michigan man Jason, or Brian, if I got, you probably had more than I'd listed up there. Thank you guys all for your super chats. You guys were throwing so many out there, I just couldn't even keep up. So appreciate it.
Brian comes back with, if Eli doesn't throw those passes, he has 9. Okay, Brian, you'll have to come on here. Maybe I'll start an NFL channel. Anyway, we'll do an NFL history channel. Brian, we could go back and forth on that one because there is something called the Tuck rule that got the whole thing started that was completely ludicrous. All right, anyway, we'll finish off with Christopher tonight. Christopher, how are you?
Fine. How are you, Mark?
I'm doing well.
Oh, hi, Tim.
Hi, Chris.
How are you? I was going to ask you guys. I didn't really catch the Cotton Bowl, but you were talking a little bit about that. I guess if a player, I didn't. I'll be fair. I didn't really see it, but was it just that you think it was poor execution? I think the better team. I'm not prejudiced against either one, but I kind of wondered if the better team actually won the game. Do you guys have any thoughts on that?
My point when it happened, when I was in the shell shock moment, I just came off and just said that it doesn't matter who was a better team or whatever. In life, when you're presented with an opportunity, the winners seize the opportunity, the losers don't. And USC had an opportunity, they didn't seize it. Tulane had an opportunity, they did, and they won the game. That's just what happened.
It looked like they initially ruled that touchdown as if it wasn't one. I guess I was going to ask you guys on that too. And I think they probably made, I don't know. Even that one was kind of questionable. I saw the replay in it. I know the ball didn't hit the ground, but don't they have a different rule in place now to where you have to kind of maintain possession throughout the catch, don't you? Am I wrong about that?
That was 100% a catch. I don't know what you saw, but he caught the ball.
It didn't look like he had control, and I mean, ultimately, I think, he fell back or whatever it was, and I don't think the ball ever hit the ground, but I thought for a completed catch, I always thought there was a new rule that you have to not only do you have to catch it, you have to kind of control it, is what I thought it was. Am I wrong?
The ball was moving around, but he got possession at some point, and that was it.
Well, I know he ended up catching. I mean, ultimately, I think, even then, though, I don't know that it wasn't clear to me if he caught the ball, but I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out. But the other game that was sort of like that, Michigan threw a bomb or whatever it was, and I can't remember the guy's name, but he caught it, kind of fell back into the end zone, and then it was kind of the same thing. It looked like when they reviewed it, it looked like he didn't really have control of it until he finally caught it. And then there was a question about whether they should have. There was 2 questions. There's a question about whether it was a completed catch, and then if it was a completed catch, whether it was a touchdown. Do you have an opinion about whether they made the correct call on that one? Do you remember which one I mean?
Absolutely. So, for one thing,
I think his name was it Hamlin. I don't know. Maybe not. The receiver caught the ball and then
Roman Wilson.
Oh, Wilson. Okay, I'm sorry.
So they never did have a pylon type shot down the goal line to show us, so it's difficult to piece together that angle of here's a player that was basically sitting on the goal line when he catches the ball and comes down, and where is that ball in relationship to the goal line versus when he secures the catch and his rear end lands, or any part of him lands that is determined to be down, like a shin and elbow, etc. So that's what was difficult for me, and I haven't looked at it again since actually just watching the game live, so I didn't ever go back and try to make a determination after the fact. But that is what was difficult for me. But I would say, we saw the umpteen number of replays during the game that I believed that he crossed the goal line myself.
Right. Well, there's nothing wrong with that, Mark. I looked at it, because I have YouTube and I can I did a freeze frame on it, and I might be a little, I tend to favor one team more than the other. I'll be fair about it. But from my perspective, I think it was a correct overrule, because I think just from my perspective, and you can weigh that into whether you think my perspective is messed up or what, I looked like he secured it, caught it. He actually fell back into the end zone. I understand that, but I think it was a completed catch before, with the part I think he fell on his butt, and that was kind of strange part about it too. He's kind of in a strange, relative to what you would think a receiver would be and to catch a football. So to me, it was like, I felt like even though it might not have been a popular overturn or whatever, I tend to think that the way it was ruled, I think was a fair ruling. It just from my, whatever you want to call it, my perspective or whatever. Do you have any thoughts about that or?
Well, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just stating that I was watching the game. I saw the zillion replays. I thought it was difficult for me to be conclusive about it because there was no shot right down the goal line. But I thought he was in the end zone. But I am not convicted to that stance. And again, I haven't gone back and looked at it again.
Well, they had like I don't know what the angle it was. They say reverse angle, but it was more like from the back corner of the end zone. It looked like, so kind of looking kind of at a slant, and it just from that angle, it looked like he caught the ball, and before he fell back, it looked like part of his body, I think, was part of it actually hit the line, part of it didn't. So again, but if it's where the football landed, in other words, at the time he caught it, I think it actually probably shouldn't have been a touchdown unless there's a rule that says that you have to maintain possession all the way through it. And that's kind of what I was trying to say was, if there's a rule that he has to maintain possession, then maybe it wasn't a catch until he caught it in the end zone. I don't know. But for me, it looked like it was maybe it wasn't a popular decision, but I don't know that it was the wrong call. And there was all kinds of, I looked on the comment section, and like a lot of people were saying it was a bad call, but I don't know that is Michigan really going to blame the loss on that one play? I mean, I don't know. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I know that maybe some Michigan fans are, but with all the Michigan fans that we have here and other Michigan contributors that we have, they've all been very fair about not blaming the loss on that one play. They should have punched it into the end zone. What I found also interesting about that was if he didn't clear the goal line, the ball should have been placed like right on the goal line.
Yeah.
And if memory serves me, while watching the game, I thought, why is the ball being placed? It was around like almost to the full yard line. It was like 3/4 of the way to the 1 yard line.
I didn't see that, so I can't really say anything about that. But I just kind of, devil's advocate, I guess. Maybe I didn't think it was a bad call initially, and I still really don't. But at the same time, I don't know that I understand what the rule is on keeping possession, maintaining. I thought that the completed catch requires that you keep possession all the way through till you are down. And I don't know, he didn't get touched. So, I mean, as far as that goes, he never was down by contact. But as far as being down by body, I think he actually might have been down by body part. That's just from my angle, the angle that I saw anyway. So if it was by just by him being down on the ground, I don't know how they could say that was a bad call if that's what it is. I don't know about where they spot the ball. I didn't see that.
Yeah. Again, in the moment, I thought he crossed the goal line with the ball secured.
Well, I know he crossed the goal line. I'm just saying I'm trying to figure out what the rule is so I understand better what the rule, was it a bad application of a rule, or was it, I know he crossed the goal line, Mark. I saw the play, but if he was down, let's just say if it was his knee, I know it wasn't his knee, but if his knee was down and the ball wasn't like, just say he was a running, or, knee hit the ground, the ball hadn't crossed the goal line. So it doesn't matter if you cross the goal line if your knee's down, right? So if it's the same thing with the butt instead of the knee.
Well, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's where I can save you time. So when his butt went down, where was the ball? Was it across the plane? It did not.
Yeah.
Therefore,
yeah.
No touchdown.
At whatever point, any of those key, they're outlined in the rule book. The key points of your body are considered to be a point of contact to be down as a ball carrier. At whatever point one of those came down, which I think was his rear end.
If there's anything but your hand or your foot touching, if there's anything but those two things, you're down.
Yeah,
that's it.
Well, again, like I said, just from the angle I saw, which was like kind of a reverse angle sort of thing, and in slow motion, obviously. I mean, and that was kind of the complaint was, well, yeah, if you freeze the frame down, and then maybe, people are actually kind of complaining that that's how that became down. Because they think in a live action sort of thing that you shouldn't have to be able to go back. And I guess that was one of the complaints was that, like using I guess technology to decide whether was in or not, that they kind of felt like it wasn't fair because, you know, in the live action, it looked like he was clearly over the line. It's kind of what one of the, you know, that was one of the objections, that it shouldn't come down to like micro technology to see whether he was actually down or not. That it was like, I guess, what would you call it? That it was maybe, even if it wasn't the correct call, that maybe the touchdown, it shouldn't have been reversed on a replay sort of thing.
So it was reviewed. He was down before he reached the goal line. I don't know what your argument is.
Well, I just tried to explain it to you, Tim. I
got your argument. I got your argument. We've gone over a couple times. I'm not trying to be curt with you, but so what happened is on review, his rear end touched down, which is not his hand or his foot. Therefore, at that point, where was the ball? The ball had not crossed the plane. Therefore, not a touchdown. Is there anything else we want to discuss on that?
Well, yeah, because he crossed the line without being, you know, I know in the professional leagues maybe they have a different rule, but
no,
you know, like,
same rule.
Well, I guess it's still not real clear to me whether he was down by contact or not. But yeah, if it's basically any part of his body other than, you said, his hand or his foot. So I guess in that case, maybe, you know, and again, I don't know, I'm not the official, obviously, but I don't know that I would have overturned it. In all fairness, I don't know. I might have said, well, yeah, it looks like it's, so I guess the complaint was that they're using like this replay in a way that.
Chris, do you have anything else?
Well, Tim, I mean, it's kind of an important thing. I mean, I don't think you're just brushing it off. Like, it doesn't matter.
It's really not. I think Mark's a lot more like patient than me, but we've gone over the same thing like for the past 2 minutes.
Yeah, I'm just trying to determine what I know your point is that you're trying to determine, did they make the right call? I get it. It was a huge call, but Michigan should have been able to score the points with the ball at the half-yard line with all those, you know, 4 plays to do it, and they failed. They fumbled. So, yeah, it was a huge play and a huge game, but we reviewed it, and, you know, I don't know what point you're trying to make.
Well, maybe you didn't see that. I saw a report on it later that said there were mistakes by the officials cost Michigan the game. It was like the report I saw on it. That's kind of what I'm trying to explain. So
when you say a report, you just mean somebody wrote something on the internet.
Well, yeah.
Well, anybody can make up anything that they want on the internet. There are all sorts of people making all sorts of claims about who botched games or who got robbed.
Well, and the other one was the targeting call that was reversed.
Sure.
That
same thing.
Well, yeah. I didn't think it was a bad call to reverse it.
Yeah, I didn't have an issue. I did not have an issue with that being taken off the board.
And I don't know that either play. I mean, with giving Michigan the touchdown, would that have changed the whole course of the game to where Michigan clearly wins the game? Or
no, because there was a whole lot of football played after that.
I mean, it's possible,
but they did not score a touchdown as opposed to scoring a touchdown, and they lost the game by 6 points. And they would have scored a touchdown.
Well, then it made a difference. Then that's kind of why I brought it up.
Most likely, well, we don't know how the rest of the game would have played out, but yes, it was a huge play. Absolutely.
Well, again, Tim's going to kill me, but that's why I think it's important that we know whether it was the right call or not, because if it wasn't the right call, then it changes the outcome of the game.
So yeah, 7 points would change the complexion, or 6, right? Maybe miss the field goal or the extra point. Anyway, the point is, yeah, of course, it's going to change the entire game because it's adding an event, adding points onto the game. But at the end of the day, it looked like the right call. I didn't see a lot of Michigan fans complaining about it, so I don't really know why we're talking about it.
I think the reason why, Chris, most Michigan fans, I haven't heard that many Michigan fans, period, and we talked to a lot of them here, complain about it because their team still had a 1st and goal. Now, if that would have been overturned as a catch, period, and they would have said, nope, incomplete, we're wiping out a 50-yard pass play, that would have been different. No, they received the ball inside the 1-yard line, 1st and goal.
Right. That's why I was real confused about why people were so upset about it, because they looked at it like you're taking points off the board, whereas I kind of looked at it like, well, you know, the worst thing they could have done was say he didn't catch it, and now instead of being first,
yeah. So don't let every little person out there who's going to gripe about a call.
Well, it wasn't like one person here, one person there. It was like every person that.
Okay. Yes, because people are sports fans and they're adamant, they're passionate and irrational. So there you go.
So you don't necessarily think that Michigan got jobbed then?
No.
Well, I don't know that I do either, but you know, no. I don't want one play to decide a game. I want it to be about how
Sure.
Well, that's just how I am.
Again, to me, the issue would have been had that play been like an all or nothing, like either you pick up 50 yards or you don't.
You mean like a Hail Mary at the end of the game or something?
As opposed to we still determined that this was a catch. It was just the difference between was he inside the goal line or just outside the goal line, and it was just outside the goal line. Therefore, boom, you've got the ball first and goal at the half-yard line. So you need to convert that, and any decent football team converts that 98% of the time.
Well, I'm going to play devil's advocate again, Mark. Let's just put it right at the end of the game instead of where it was. And let's say the same thing happens, and let's say because, they don't want to not give Michigan, they give them the ball at the 1 with 1 minute or whatever it would have been, and they do the same thing. I mean, would they still have a good argument against them not getting it? Is that still a good argument? Because it's like it was the same thing, but if it was it is kind of like taking points off a little bit, isn't it?
Okay.
At the end.
There are certain calls made during the course of any football game that get reviewed that where we could point to over the course of football history and say, you know what, they missed that. That was wrong.
Is that why you feel about this one?
No. There's very few of those. There's a ton of calls like this one where we can debate all over the place. And I think anyone reasonable's kind of, I think, in my camp where you may either side to the point that I think they got it right or side to the point where, you know what, I think they got it wrong, but it was so close that I'm not arguing one way or the other. I'm just telling you my first response to your question was, I think he scored, but I don't really know. So I'm fine with the call. I'm not bashing, and slamming my fist to the table, going on and on about how Michigan got jobbed.
Well, I don't know that I am either. To me, it looked like he scored live. It did look like he scored, but that was the thing is when they looked at it on replay, it wasn't so certain, I guess.
Absolutely. That's why they reversed it.
Oh, okay.
All right, Chris, anything else?
Well, if you don't mind, I was just going to try to again get your thoughts on whether, for example, and I know I've mentioned this a million times and you probably don't want to, I don't blame you if you don't want to discuss it again. My solution would have been not to have a semifinal game and just put Michigan against Georgia in a championship game. And then we don't have to even talk about that. Now it's, and that's kind of why I'm not saying it's because of that, but I'm not sold on this idea of any playoff really.
You are promoting less football.
Wasn't Alabama 4 seed, Mark, when they won? Am I wrong? Who was that?
Ohio State was a 4 seed in 2014. Bama was a 4 seed, in 17.
Yeah.
Well, so that's why, because you know what it does? It's just like I know you like the BCS, the computer, but sometimes they get 1 and 2 wrong. And so this allows for that error. 4 is better than 2. That way, the margin of error, and this year it worked out. It looks like they had the 2 best teams, right? Because they played on the field. But we didn't know that before the teams played.
Well,
Chris, those 2 games on Saturday were prolific. One of them was zany, crazy. The TCU Michigan game was just a crazy game. You didn't know what was going to happen next. The Ohio State Georgia game, and even I just watched Kirby Smart's news conference actually just before I came on here. And he stated it exactly the way I was thinking of it. That was just a game between just 2 colossally talented teams that were just laser focused and at their best meeting. And that was the result. It came down to why do you want to deprive college football fans of 2 ridiculously entertaining games?
I don't want to again spoil your if that's really true. How did Ohio State end up missing that field goal? I mean, to me, it's if it's what you're saying, I think then if it comes down to that field goal, they convert it, but whatever. I mean, I don't know, Mark. I'm not a big fan of playoffs. I guess I might be the only one that's that way, but I don't think I don't think they add anything, period. I don't think that you can make a case for it based on the way the games went, but I would have rather just seen Michigan and Georgia in a title game and say the winner take the championship. That's just how I feel about it. You can say
you just lost me with the field goal thing. I swear you just did. I was kind of following, but that field goal, that's the game. That's why they play.
Laser focused, I think you make the field goal, but whatever. I'm not a kicker, so.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just saying,
that doesn't mean everyone's perfect on the field.
Well, that's kind of what I thought that was your point. No, that was kind of your point.
My point was, as I talked about for a month leading into that game, that if Ohio State had its heads screwed on straight, that game had the potential of being a classic. And guess what, Chris? It was a classic.
Well, sure.
It came down to a field goal at the end, Chris.
I'm not saying that that was a high pressure kick. I'm not saying any kicker couldn't have, but I'm just saying,
nobody's blaming the kicker. That was a very difficult kick and tough circumstances. The point is that under your desire,
sure,
we would not have seen maybe the two best teams in the country playing to a 42-41 game.
Well, we might be looking. It makes that kick. Obviously, we're looking at Ohio State and Texas Christian in a title game, is what we're looking at.
Sure,
but I'd rather see
they miss the kick, and that's part of football. You got to make the kick too.
I'd rather.
Mark, did you say the two best teams?
I said arguably. I think
the Michigan fans will call you on that one.
Absolutely.
I might even call you on that one.
Absolutely, I get that, but I believe that those are the two best teams in the country.
All right, well, that's all I have to.
It's very arguable. Obviously,
I don't know. I saw the game.
So you don't think that Texas Christian can beat? I mean, you don't think they have much of a chance to beat Georgia? You're like everybody else that just thinks that they might give them a game but won't win.
20% chance.
Okay,
I'll go in that range.
Well, I guess we'll see. I guess.
All right, Chris.
All right, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Take care.
We were going to wrap it up with Chris, but we do have Jeff Grimm on the line. Jeff, how you doing?
Hey, I just wanted to come in one quick second and tell you, one of the biggest problems with college football is, like, he wanted to mention targeting. Targeting is an interpretation, and all the referees, they have different, this one says it's targeting, this one says it ain't. I think that the NCAA needs to do away with Pac-12 refs, Big 12 refs, Big 10 refs. They need to come up with just refs. Let the NCAA control them. Let them train them. Let them all go to the same classes, because right now, and Tim will tell you, he believes the Pac-12 are the worst refs. Well, why are they trained different than an SEC? It's all one game, and we're all playing for one title. So why aren't all the refs? You know what I mean?
You're right, but that's the way the entire sport is run.
And you know what? The one thing I will say is, of the games that weekend, I think the Pac-12 ref crew actually had a shock the shit out of me, but I think they actually did the best job of all the games, to be honest with you.
Yeah, they only blew 3. Remember, Tim? Because we were counting in the over/under. I thought it would be 6 to 7 bad calls, and they actually did well. But if you look at the Michigan game, TCU game, who were the referees? Those were the same referees who reffed Alabama and Tennessee and got called in the SEC office because they blew the targeting call on Bryce Young. So I mean, I'm not saying, that they're terrible refs, but they blew the same targeting in the Alabama, Tennessee, and got reprimanded for it. And to me, that's kind of the problem with targeting. You can have all the instant replays and you can have all the rules in the world, but it still comes down to, if you have a rule like targeting, which is human interpretation, guess what? You're going to have human error. And unfortunately, in every game, I don't care, you guys watch every game. Have you ever seen a game where there wasn't a bad call? There's always a handful of calls, so.
Yeah, I pound the table, Jeff. I pound the table because Pac-12 refs ruin the flow of the game. They call holding penalties and pass interference penalties that no other conference would call, and it just really ruins the flow of the game. In general, I think refs have always made mistakes. It's a tough job, and I'm glad we have the slow-mo, right, the replays. But here's the thing with something like targeting, I do think that they need to err on the side of not make it targeting, meaning it needs just, I have like they say that on the replays, it has to be like indisputable evidence. If it's gray area, they should make it no targeting. If you're not sure it's targeting, then you got to waive it. I know it's not perfect, but like that, for instance, the Marvin Harrison catch, right? See, to me, it is targeting. It was mainly shoulder. It was shoulder, but he did hit helmet as well. And the rule states that if you are a receiver, you get the ball before you turn and make a football play, you're a defenseless player. Therefore, there's no that's how it's written. There is no contact to the head or neck area. Was there contact to the head or neck? There was. Did he leave the shoulder? Absolutely. But there was head contact. And I mean, the guy got knocked out, for God's sake. I mean, it's not like, it's not like that he wasn't concussed. So, I mean, I don't know. It's what it is, right?
I mean, it's hard when players, get targeting and they have to leave the game. And then they get, I mean, I think there should be degrees to targeting. But, like I said, I agree with you that, they should err on the side, of caution, because unfortunately, a lot of players are getting hurt today, and helmet to helmet is causing a lot of them. But that's all I wanted. I didn't want to keep you, Mark. I just wanted to bring up, I think, the refs do a great job for the most part, but unfortunately they're human. And if you've ever coached any game, and I don't care if it's soccer, baseball, softball, I mean, it's not a fun job. It's a thankless kind of job, and you're just out there trying to do your best, Well,
if anyone wants to complain about a targeting call, the USC player, oh my God, I got his name. Ohio State safety that came to USC.
Bryson Shaw.
Shaw, that was dangerous. They're lucky no one was seriously injured. And that was targeting, and they did not call that targeting. That one blew my mind. But anyway.
Hey, Jeff, we appreciate you stopping by, man.
All right. Have a great night, guys.
You too. We are at the 3 hour and 25 minute mark. So Sooner Thrawn, this is going to be like rapid fire. So folks, I always hate this when I push people through at the end, but you got to realize, been on for 3.5 hours. You should have called like
Mark,
2.5
you did
hours
say
ago.
2 callers ago. This is the last call, so I don't think you need to apologize.
Brian, thank you for the super chat. He's not ruled down till the catch has been completed, not when the body part touches. And I believe we've got another super chat. Ferris was in here. Let me find it. Ferris. Ohio State lost the last 2 games, and they're number 2. They're number 2 according to fans. Sure. No, you're talking about me. No, Ferris. Let me explain something. There's a difference between making a judgment, an evaluation, an opinion that we all do, just saying, I think these 2 are the best teams in the country, versus what I'm going to rank them. I am not going to rank Ohio State ahead of Michigan. They lost to them. They have a worse record. Okay? No, I didn't say that they're going to be ranked number 2 in my rankings. I said I believed I was watching the 2 best teams in the country play on that given day. 2 different things. All right, Sooner Thrawn, take us home.
How are you, sir? It's been a while.
Doing well. How are you? It has been a while.
But I've been just hadn't been calling in a while. But first of all, the guy that talked about the Michigan play and the Tulane play and how he doesn't like playoffs and how he doesn't think computers should spin things. Can he just not watch college anymore? We really don't want him to watch it because he doesn't like playoffs. He doesn't want replay. He thinks if a guy catches the ball and juggles it, but it never hits the ground, is that a catch? I mean, does that guy watch football? Does he know anything? Because the questions he were saying, and then a field goal. I mean, why did we even do the field goal at the end for Ohio State? I don't understand. And why don't we just put Michigan versus Georgia, even though TCU beat Michigan? Where does he even come in with that logic? But anyway, I don't know who that guy is. He should just go start watching, like bowling or something. Maybe he'll understand.
Sooner Thrawn, just to give you a little background real quick, based on he has a proficiency rating, and based on his rankings or ratings, he has Georgia and Michigan number 1 and 2. So he thought that they should have just been. So
I would take anything that guy says because he doesn't even know if it's a catch or not. It didn't hit the ground, dude. It has to hit the ground.
Does anybody in the chat currently, anybody listening to me, would you have rather not seen those two games last Saturday? Like, how could we have not seen
That's nuts.
two better football
It's like
games?
the greatest semifinals we've ever had. I mean, why would you not want 12 teams? Why do you not want a on-campus Oklahoma hosting USC? Why would you not want that? Why would you not want that? That would be the greatest rating game. We kick his ass, and then he'd go to the pros.
Business too.
Wait a minute, Sooner. Where are we playing that game? Are we playing that in the Palace or are we playing that at the Coliseum?
We're playing in Norman.
Oh no! Oh no!
On campus.
Riley might have. I mean, bring it. Why would you not want? Why do you not want? Why would that guy not want Tennessee having to go to Florida State or not want USC hosting? Why would you not want that? That's amazing. That'd be the greatest thing to have an on-campus playoff game. And I'll ask. I just want one OU USC home game in the playoffs, and then he could go coach the Texans for $20 million a year and whatever he wants to do. But I just want that one game. That's all I want.
I forget how the seedings would have played out this year because we've talked about it like every week, and Tim and his guys on the Pac-12 show have lined up, what the seedings would look like in the future. But we would have had like an Alabama USC playoff game, I believe, in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah. Why would you not want that?
We would have had Tennessee, Kansas State, I believe. We would have had a lot of like a Penn State Clemson game.
Probably would have had it. Yeah, well, TCU, they were third, so they would have bye. But yeah, I mean, you'd have. I mean, the first
Kansas
round.
State would have had that. Anyway, regardless, we would have had.
Well,
great
Kansas State would have made it. They would have made it because
Yes.
they won the conference. But yeah, so I don't know why. So I know you're 3 hours, so I just wanted to throw in mind that guy should never call in, and he just needs to watch another sport. So that's just my thought. But rapid fire, you're the USC guy, so I mean,
I'm one of the USC guys.
How long do you think?
I got Rick and Tony too.
How long do you think Riley will stay in the Big Ten?
That's a hard question. I mean, talented coaches.
Does he take the job if he knew they were going to the Big Ten?
Yeah. I
probably, and they paid him enough, but
I don't. I think so. You should check this out. Okay, so I know there's a lot of anger from the Sooner side. I get it. It's fine. But our guy Matt Zemek, he did Did you have a chance? Have you seen Matt? Have you seen the interview he did with an OU insider guy?
No,
sorry, I'm forgetting his name.
Who was the OU insider guy? Who was he?
I don't really know. You should check it out. But
Matt, his name is Matt. He's a USC guy or something?
Yeah, Matt Zemek. He's over at Trojans Wire. He did a 10-part series. Sorry, Mark, I'll get it quick. But you should check him out. He breaks it down. And so what happened was there's a lot of, usually the truth somewhere in the middle. I know the narrative was that Riley was afraid of the SEC, so he was leaving. I think there's a half truth to that. I think Riley did not want to join the SEC with the amount of support, the amount of support that he was receiving from the administration. And the administration was saying that you aren't winning titles or whatever, and boosters are not giving you full support. So we're not giving you that stuff. And so they balked. And then he basically said, okay, I'm going to go to USC. Now, whether you believe that or not is totally up to you. Riley, just like any head coach, these guys are egomaniacs. If you
This guy, Riley has the biggest egomaniac of anybody. He is and the one thing that I will say about that, and I don't totally doubt that that's
have
not
you
what
met Lane
happened.
Kiffin?
That's
you sure?
Well, Lane Kiffin until he kind of changed his narrative at Florida Atlantic, he kind of changed it. He was the most overrated coach of all time. But now I think he's okay now. And apparently if you go 8-5, you get $2 million more in the SEC because he might go somewhere else and go 8-5. But Riley, the thing about Riley, and this was what I will say, because Venables, and I believe he will figure it out and will be. And I know the SEC is going to be tough, and I do, but I do think we'll make the playoffs in 24. I think we improve next year. Expanded playoffs, we make it. But when Brent came in and he says, I want to have this for this budget for assistants, this budget for analysts, this and that. The difference is Brent Venables has connections extremely more than Lincoln Riley does. So I don't totally believe that they didn't just say you can't have it. I think they said, well, we'll see who can you offer to us? And I don't think he has the connections that Brent has. And they're like, well, that's not good enough. Now, that's what I believe. And if you think about it, Riley came from Tech to East Carolina to OU, and he was this golden child just kind of put into to say how great he is. And he is good. He knows offense. He does know offense. Now, I will say a thing. I think Josh Heupel, if he stays and he gets to have Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, he probably would have stayed at Oklahoma because that was the worst thing Stoops ever had to do. He felt like he had to. But he had to play with Trevor Knight and the Belldozers. Trevor Knight was a joke. So that's what I'm saying. I don't think Riley had the connections to bring guys in like Venables did.
Didn't you lose 5 games with Heupel as your offensive coordinator? Then you guys ran him out of town.
It was the 2014. It was it was the hardest thing Stoops ever had to do.
Games, right?
Yeah, it was. Games. Yeah, because my point is, if we had known what we had in Baker Mayfield, I think Heupel would have been almost as good because I think Riley had way better quarterbacks than Josh ever had, and no one can doubt that. He had Baker, Kyler Murray, and Jalen Hurts compared to the Belldozer, Trevor Knight, and Cody Johnson, or whatever the hell his name was. So I would have been interested to see how Josh would have done. I think he got more of the blame, but we didn't know what Baker had. I mean, we didn't know. He was a fresh walk-on at Tech. We didn't know he was going to be that good. We got lucky. He just showed up. I mean,
who's the better head coach, Brent Venables or Lincoln Riley, in your opinion?
I would say right now, obviously, if you go by proofing, Riley. But
no, I'm just saying, just.
I don't think that. I think in the long run, it will be better for us in the long run because I don't think Riley would have stuck around that long in the SEC and we'd have been starting. I think Brent will make us better and more competitive in the SEC because he can bring a full around. Our defense will be much better. And it's horrible to this year, but I mean, Grinch.
No, you guys are bringing in a really good class, and again,
yeah, I mean,
the story behind this is they've opened up the purse strings, and you guys have a very good collective, and you guys are doing what you need to do, and you guys have a great defensive recruiting class. My question to you though is I would challenge you to maybe kind of do a little research on your own, stay off Twitter, stay off message boards, and just have a listen to what that guy has to say. Because you know what? Believe me, he is not pro USC. He probably isn't even pro Riley, but he does lay it out in a very succinct way that, you know how like teams play a recruit and then the recruit ends up going somewhere else.
Sure.
The way he lays it out, Riley was being slow played and he said, all right, I'm going to leave. And I will tell you this, it wasn't no one at OU ran Riley out. That's a fact. And quite frankly, I bet you if we took a poll of all the Sooner fans, before this news broke, even after losing Bedlam, I'll bet you 90% wanted Riley coming back at least. So I don't really believe the hype about he's a snake, he's this, he's that, he can't coach. It was just quarterbacks. I think time will show that it's not just him getting. Part of the reason why the quarterbacks are there is because of Lincoln Riley.
I don't disagree with Caleb Williams. Definitely was the reason. Now Baker, he just got lucky. Baker was there a year before him. He just got lucky. And Murray.
We should have this conversation another time. Mark's working on hour number 4 in a minute. And
no, I understand. Caleb Williams, I agree. He absolutely got him because of Brett.
It was nice talking to you. And again, believe me, talking to fans like you and Shoelace Sooner has given me hope for Sooner Nation, because I'll tell you what, in Twitter, it's not a very pretty picture, but I appreciate the conversation.
Yep. All right, man.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you being here.
All right.
Good to see you. It's our guy Sooner Thrawn. All right. That about does it. And because I've made it past the 3-hour mark, Tim is contractually obligated.
The Iron Horse. Mark the Iron Horse Rogers. Okay. Absolutely.
Lou Gehrig and myself. Okay. All right, folks. We're going to do this all again on Sunday. Yes, we are, because we want to hit up the national championship game big. So we will be live on a Sunday and on Monday, and we'll lead you right up to kickoff for the national
Some great
championship
super chats too, Mark. Thank you, Larry Pilgrim, David Greenshield, Steve D, best name on here, Steve Dace Burner, Brian. I don't want to mess your name up. Thank you, Shoelace Sooner, Michigan Man Jason. Did I get? I think that's it. And Ferris. Thank you guys so much. You guys contributed quite a bit. And appreciate you a lot.
Thank you so much for that, everyone. Appreciate you. And we will announce a time. I'm trying to line that up based on when the media folks can make it that we've contacted. So whatever the best time is, it could be mid-afternoon, late afternoon, or it could be a late night deal on Sunday. So regardless, be looking out for the notifications. If you're not subscribed, please do that. And that way you can track everything we do. And believe me, I'm actually excited about the off season because we got so many topics that we're going to tackle here, starting with our top 25 that actually makes sense, the actual, final edition. And then we'll go from there with all sorts of different kind of rankings and so forth. The Real MVP asked me to, he made a request that I rank the coaches hires because I did that last year and I will do that. So all the brand new coaches hires, we will rank those and give our opinion on that. And also the first year from this past season, the Dan Lannings and the Kalen DeBoers and all those guys, we will rate the jobs that they did in their first years this past 2022 season. Tim, thanks for hanging out with me. Helped out a lot.
I wasn't going anywhere. Thank you. I'm always here. I'm usually in the chat, just hovering, arguing
All
with
right,
people.
folks. We'll be back on Sunday. Hit that bell for the notifications to know when we're going to be live. We'll see you then. Super chat, Sooner Thrawn, got to get this in. Boomer, Sooner, thanks. Thank you, Sooner Thrawn. Call back sometime.